Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson, live on YouTube, coming at you from the Antonio Cromartie studio in part with Huggies. And it's all brought to you by FanDuel here today, Sam. We got a monster show building off yesterday's monster show. 1 week out.
Monsters on monsters.
Monsters everywhere. 1 week out from the draft. A week from today, we won't even be live. We'll just be waiting. The calm before the storm next Thursday. I love that. I absolutely love the Thursday buildup until the 8-hour extravaganza that will be Check the Mic all night. But we're 1 week out. Today we're talking risers and fallers in the draft, and we'll take a little stroll down memory lane. Our hits and misses.
Yeah.
Our hits and misses show. We'll go back to all of our hits, brag about our hits, lament our misses, and I think that'll be fun. We'll present those to each other.
Yeah.
We'll do that a little bit later on. What are you more interested in? Let us know in the chat. Risers and fallers. So how you doing? Ready to go?
Yep, let's go.
Risers and fallers. We looked at this. I looked at this a couple different ways here, Sam, if we're looking at names in the draft. Yesterday we touched on sleepers, and that was fun. It was a good palate cleanser, I would say, for draft season. We've been talking about these first-round players a ton. First-round mocks. There'll be more first-round players to talk about today. But I think there's two ways to look at the risers and fallers to this point. It is from the beginning of the season, Fernando Mendoza is worth a mention, right? Players that when we talked about the draft last summer weren't talked about as first-round players. I think they're worth discussing. Risers and fallers through that lens, and then recent late risers and fallers. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Let's start high level. Let's talk Mendoza quickly. Beginning of the season, we thought Arch Manning, Garrett Nussmeier, Drew Allar, Lenora Sellers.
So particularly Arch Manning. This was heading into this college football season. Arch Manning was the presumed number one overall pick, even though, the history of the Mannings kind of suggests they don't tend to come out early. Unless I'm not sure even if he'd have had an amazing season if he'd have come out, but whatever. Arch Manning starts off the year terribly, redeems himself later on, ends up staying in school. He's not the number one overall pick. And then out of, not nowhere, but Fernando Mendoza becomes the guy over the course of the year and really over the course of the second half of the season. So take me back at the time, this time a year ago, effectively, when everyone is like Arch Manning's next year's number one overall pick, where was Mendoza in that structure? Because he wasn't nowhere, but he wasn't, supposed to be number one.
If I could probably pull out my old consensus board. I'm guessing he was like 6th, 7th among quarterbacks at the time.
Right.
And this isn't uncommon, right? Joe Burrow went from an average SEC starter to the best season of all time maybe in college football. Kyler Murray went from non-starter to starter in Heisman. This isn't uncommon, but Mendoza – and look, there's always somebody. Nate Tice, I respect Nate's work a ton. And Nate was like, this is my guy. Was it the guy Corey?
Kinnan?
Yeah, that guy. When I asked last year, my farm engagement question, who's QB1 next year? And people throwing names out all over the place. He said something like, walk with me here, Mendoza. This is, keep an eye on him at Indiana, basically. So there's always people that have identified. But the story was about Arch. Going into the year, it's like, what's Arch going to do? Can Lenora Sellers find some accuracy and timing in the pass game because he's a special runner? Can Garrett Nussmeier build on what he did last year? Can Drew Allar finally put it all together? They went back to the portal to get receivers. Those were the stories at the quarterback position. And the reason why we always say next year's quarterback class is going to be good is because there's always a list. This year is going to be an even bigger list. There's going to be like 12 of these guys.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are like, if they take this next step. And not one of them took a next step. Not one. They all went backwards.
Yeah, and that's the cautionary tale for the idea that next year's class will be amazing, which tends to be the view a year out because you don't see the ones going backwards. You assume everyone's going to get better. Think for a second how much Drew Allar may have fumbled the bag. He might have been QB2 off the board last year.
I know we keep saying that, but he finished kind of weak last year too.
Yeah, but kind of weak
in a big game against Notre Dame, and it was.
But a lot better, kind of weak in a much better situation where the quarterback class was not good and people were. He would have been picked apart more once people sort of really analyzed him and put the microscope over him the same way they did the other guys. But, like, people were looking for reasons to take somebody other than Jackson Dart, Tyler Shuck, and Shedeur Sanders as the next quarterback off the board. I think he may have gone first round last year. And now we're talking, I mean, who knows where he's going to go this year, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be earlier than, round 3.
So when we get back to Mendoza, like, he was on the radar.
Yeah.
But he was on lower. He was lower on the radar than these other players who looked toolsier and everything. And he had done a nice job at Cal. Indiana was coming off of a playoff run, so they made it to the playoffs under year one under Kurt Signetti. They had Nathan Rourke, and then they got Mendoza, and they had a strong team going in. I think a lot of people who knew ball knew that they had a strong team. I know that my predictive college football model that I use for consulting with teams had Indiana as the number 1 team in the nation going into the year, predictively, and they ended up winning it all, going undefeated. But I don't think people expected, or even my model expected, Mendoza to have that kind of rise to clear-cut number 1, and even halfway through the season. I remember sending the text, I think to Renner, halfway through the season. I said, top 10, it's Mendoza, it's Ty Simpson and Dante Moore. And this is why the Dan O conversation about, hey, first 8 games, Ty Simpson looked great. Like, that's not a wild statement.
It's not even...
Now, to ignore the second half of the season might be too wild, but halfway through the season, you would say...
It's not even controversial. It's like where we were.
Where we were was, if the draft happened on October 15th, you would say Ty Simpson and Dante Moore are probably the top 2 quarterbacks off the board. But Mendoza kept getting better and better and better and ticked every box, and he did win a bunch of big games, and he won a bunch of big games with big throws in crunch time, or big runs in crunch time, and that's how Mendoza got to where we are.
You're right, though. On the one hand, it's not uncommon that, quarterback, again, not comes from nowhere, but comes from further down in the pack and becomes the consensus number 1 guy. What's interesting about Mendoza, though, is how little a sample size that appears to be built on. Because you mentioned before, Kyler Murray was basically good from the second he was playing to the end. It was a season's worth, right? Joe Burrow put together one of the most insane seasons in college football history. Like, it tends to, the guys that sort of come from that, vault themselves into that consensus number 1 spot, it tends to be because, something changed, they got an opportunity, they got whatever, and then they put together an amazing season start to finish. With Mendoza, it does appear to be very much more, the first half was fine, but it was this run at the end that really catapulted him into this
first half was
number 1 spot.
First half was perfectly fine. If you wanted to nitpick him, it's like, the Iowa game, he didn't play that great, but he kept making the crunch time throws. I think that's another piece of Mendoza's game, because a lot of the criticisms of Mendoza have been like, well, look at the stat line's kind of pedestrian, it's low volume, so you could. And when you make comparisons, if you say low volume, you could say, well, J.J. McCarthy was low volume in a national championship year, so he's just like J.J. Or you could look at sack rate and say, well, these other quarterbacks had bad sack rates. But I think the most appealing thing about Mendoza, and I described him as this volatile-ish type of quarterback, I think, because of the way he throws under pressure with Foles. That's a piece of his game. But he was clutch down the stretch in a ton of games. Iowa game, Oregon game, the first Oregon game. Did they play him again? Yeah. The first Oregon game, they had the game-winning drive in Oregon. Big third downfield throws against Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. Big plays all throughout the playoffs when they needed it, when they were in a couple close games, especially the national title game. So I think that was a big part of Mendoza's game, was stepping up at the right time.
I also think, we joke all the time about this idea of, I got to be there in person, got to see it, got to see it with my own eyes, right? I honestly think once Mendoza got on the radar as like, he might actually be QB1, and then became the in-person venue guy, right? Suddenly we're going to get general managers, coaches, et cetera, going to see Mendoza in person. I honestly think once they got, in person and see him, they're like, this guy's actually huge. Because I honestly think he's one of those guys that's kind of, it's like a sleeper build that people were, talking about. I honestly think once you get to see him in person, you're like, he's actually massive. Like, he's actually Big Ben size, right? He doesn't look that on screen. He just looks like a sort of Kirk Cousins-y, Jared Goff-y size quarterback, and then you see him in person, you're like, this dude's actually built like a house. I honestly think once he became on the radar, it's like he might be QB1, and then GMs start to go see him in person, you're like, he's legit. He's like He's Carson Palmer.
That's why I keep bringing up the Nick Foles thing. Not because, he's 1 for 1, but Foles had that good size, willing to stand in there and make big throws. And I think Mendoza has elements of that. Mo Hall's asking about pressure to sack rate or sack rate generally. I mean, Mendoza's career, he's 15th percentile sack rate, and he's just last season mid-tier, just overall sack rate against other NFL prospects historically. That part's not great. I mean, that is, I would say, statistically, that might be the biggest warning sign for Mendoza, because sack rate, you can offset it. Like if you're, why did I just lose his name? If you're Jaden Daniels, you can offset it because, hey, we might have 8 to 10 carries.
Right.
How has Jaden Daniels offset that in the NFL? He's scrambled. He has, when there's not a completion there, he's taken a 6 or 7 yard gain on the ground. So Jaden Daniels has balanced that out with incredible efficiency from a completion percentage, and when a completion's not there, stealing yards with his legs. Mendoza's not going to be that guy. So that's something that certainly has to improve. Now, how much of that is, again, is it lack of mobility? Is it wanting to hold the ball a little bit longer? Is it trying to get the ball downfield? He throws a lot of one-on-ones outside the numbers and tries to make throws down the field. How much can Clint Kubiak get the ball out of his hands, use the play-action game, scheme open some throws? So you might have to work around that. But that's the type of thing that, 3rd and 7s, got to get rid of the ball, got to get the ball to your playmakers' hands, and you can't always try to play hero ball. And it's not a hero ball thing with Mendoza, but it's like a willingness to wait till late in the down to make the throw, and sometimes that ends up in those negative plays.
Yeah, generally speaking, pressure to sack ratio is a fairly sticky data point. College to the NFL, it does tend to speak to a stylistic type of player. Couple of things, though. Number one, not everybody, right? Josh Allen was pretty bad at that early in his career. He's become one of the best in the NFL at that now, later in his career. So you can definitely go from, one, not pretty bad. He was okay at that. You can definitely go from middle of the pack to really good. Number two, it's a little bit like Aaron Rodgers always took more sacks than he threw interceptions. Like, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just articulating a type of player or a type of inclination to do certain things in certain situations. Joe Burrow's pressure to sack rate is bad. Like, it's the bottom end of the scale in the NFL. Joe Burrow is fairly unquestionably one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, but stylistically, he's going to take more sacks than some other quarterbacks. So it definitely does. Like, that's the biggest, statistical red flag in Mendoza's profile, and you can see it on tape that he has a tendency when pressure shows up sometimes to try and bail backwards or laterally in the pocket, and he doesn't have, the Jaden Daniels type of athleticism where you can get away with that and outrun people. He's pretty good athletically in a straight line moving forward, and there's some Daniel Jones to him in that regard, in that, he doesn't necessarily look like a guy that's going to be a threat running the ball, but once he's moving and once he's going kind of purposefully towards the defense, he's not like it's not inconsiderable. You got a problem. But a bit like Daniel Jones again, if he starts moving backwards, it's like, now this isn't going to work. You've got some issues here. So that's something I think he does need to tidy up. But he may also just skew towards that end of he's going to take more sacks than some other people.
So we're looking at risers and fallers across the NFL draft. We're looking right now at players since the start of the season, right? So this isn't like, Fernando Mendoza's broken out since February. Obviously, he's been locked in as the number 1 pick since the end of the season, but since the beginning of the year, he's in the riser category.
Right.
Obviously, we'd say the same thing about Ty Simpson. I think we've talked about his game enough, but his first year as a starter, they lose to Florida State in week 1, but then they continue to get better and better, and he has a really nice first half of the season, tapers off in the second half. We've talked about that quite a bit, but you put him in this category as at the start of the season, it's like he's on the outer reaches of the watch list. He's at Alabama. He's a first-year starter. Like, he could be, and here he is, in the first-round conversation. And as our Mike Renner mentioned yesterday, he sees him going in the first round. What's your final call on that? You say round 1 for Ty Simpson?
Yes.
I try to insulate myself from draft coverage as much as possible. But I was driving yesterday. I heard our friend Dane Brugler, author of The Beast, on NFL radio, Sirius XM.
I don't know if we've given that an official plug yet, by the way, but The Beast, which is the name for Dane Brugler's draft guide over at The Athletic, is one of the most spectacular pieces of football content you're going to find anywhere. It is this tome, giant book, 600 and something pages or whatever. Like, there's information on thousands of prospects, and not just information as in height, weight, whatever, like stories about their, mother's lost cousin or whatever. Like, absurd the amount of work that goes into this thing. Cannot recommend it highly enough. If you have even, a passing interest in the draft, there's got to be something in this book for you. I would absolutely recommend supporting Dane's work and going to get it.
And by the way, shout out to The Athletic.
It comes free with your Athletic subscription, right?
Yeah. Shout out to The Athletic for this piece of what they've been working on this week. The way they promote the Beast, and the way they've, I don't want to say done Dane a solid, but they've made that a key part of their subscription, of their NFL coverage, of their NFL draft coverage. They have, because he was doing this obviously before.
Right.
He worked for The Athletic, but they've really leaned into this and helped enhance it and made it interactive on the site. So they've done a really nice job with that, and we appreciate Dane. He joins the show whenever he can. He is booked solid, I believe, through the draft here, Sam. So we might not get him pre-draft here, but always appreciate his work, and second that, go support what he has, what he's doing. What was I talking about? So I heard Dane on the radio, and I heard someone else bring this up. There seems to be more smoke around Ty Simpson and the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if
might get him in the second round if they stay where they are.
So they're, second pick of the second round? And so I think
if they don't trade back in.
So, right. So I think that's, if we're believing this, and look, I say this every year, like, I want to go back.
It does, I mean, it makes sense in that their quarterback situation is desperate.
The rumors last year at this time were keep an eye on the Giants and Saints for Jackson Dart. And that the Giants could want to, come back into the first and go get Jackson Dart. That happened. Or that the Saints might want to come back into the first and get Jackson Dart. That obviously did not happen. But the Saints were very well tied to Tyler Shuck, and they just took him at 40. So that was some of the smoke that was real last year. The Ty Simpson to Arizona thing, and it might just be reading the depth charts, right? It might just be, look, the Jets have 1 million picks next year.
Yeah.
They might just be willing to punt this year on drafting a quarterback, so they're set up for next year. Fine. Arizona's the team that has Jacoby Brissett and Gardner Minshew.
Right. Coming off an injury.
2 bridges does not make a right, or something like that. 2 bridges. If you have 2 bridges, you have none. I think that's the old adage. So they need
you have
a
2
future
bridges,
quarterback.
But there's nothing on the other. There's nothing on the other end of the bridge. It's like I've got 2 separate bridges that lead nowhere. Right, because I don't have a young quarterback at the other end of it yet. So, yeah, I mean, it does make a ton of sense that at some point the Cardinals probably need to add something for the other side of that bridge, which Ty Simpson would make a lot of sense for.
So, anyway, just hearing it more and more. I believe Dane put his 7th-round mock out there, and he put Simpson to the Cardinals, early 2nd round there. So, other risers since the beginning of the season. Omar Cooper Jr., wide receiver out of Indiana.
So some of these are like, since the beginning of the season, like they could be either, right? They could fit either since the beginning of the season or somewhere in the beginning of this draft process. But Omar Cooper Jr. has definitely been a massive riser throughout this entire process. Season obviously was pretty spectacular, but also even coming out, the first top 50, I think, that Daniel Jeremiah put together. Like, he hadn't watched Omar Cooper Jr.'s tape properly yet, hadn't scouted him fully. And then, since basically everyone that gets to his tape is like, wow, this guy's really good. And all of a sudden he's gone from maybe he could sneak into the first round. I mean, I heard Renner was the first person I heard say that. Maybe this guy is a potential first-round guy. To now, again, there were people out there going, he's not getting by the Jets at 16 or whatever that is in the middle of the first round. So, yeah, pretty significant ascent for him.
The other part about Cooper, I tell the story all the time. I was watching him last summer, and I texted both Dane and Renner. I was like, dude, watch him, Omar Cooper. Even Dane, not to call Dane out here, but even his first preseason wide receiver rankings, I was just curious because, those are like how many – you can't watch – what is it? He has 150 receivers ranked in his – maybe more, maybe 300 ranked. He's not going to have 300 preseason rankings.
Right.
But preseason, he was still on just the watch, in the 30s on the watch list. We'll get to him. He hadn't even gotten to him last summer at this point. And almost immediately, Cooper, looked like a star early in the season, dominated. I think it was Indiana State. I know that's FCS, but had 5 touchdowns for my fantasy team, so I remember it. And just made plays every single week and became, going into the year, it was Elijah Surratt, who was more of the number one there, but he doesn't have as much, NFL translation to his game. And I think that's why Cooper has been on the rise since the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. The other name we got to mention, Monroe Freeling.
Yeah.
Georgia offensive tackle. I think he was, off the radar early in the year. And then even around leading January, February, probably you'd see him at, 38, 35 on consensus boards. Like, hey, this is your on the turn type of tackle. And then before you know it, you anticipated the workout, you saw the workout, the movement skills were evident on tape. He confirmed it at the combine, and all of a sudden he's getting the top 10 hype, or at least some buzz around the top 10.
He's the guy that, to me, that feels like the classic, like throughout he's the riser for sort of since the draft process started. Because, he went from, consensus sort of third, fourth, whatever it was, tackle to it just keeps building. Hey, by the way, there, people love this guy. And then, look out for Monroe Freeling, and then, hey, he might be the first tackle off the board. And then, like coming out of combine or whatever, don't ignore, Freeling in the top 10 and then 6, and it's just up and up and up and up. Like he might be the first tackle off the board. He might be pick number 6 to Cleveland. He might be somewhere even higher than that. Like he's gone from probably in the first round just because of the number of tackles that go in the first round every single year, but somewhere lower down in this list of tackles to there's a lot of people out there that have him as tackle number 1 in this draft class.
Any other names? I didn't list any others. Anyone else that comes to mind for you?
So I would throw, it's a smaller rise, but I think the steam is building around Casey Concepcion. He's had sort of, if you look at his, if you go to Grinding the Mocks, our friend Ben there, he's had sort of 2 rises in his chart. It's like there was a steady rise, and then it kind of tapered off and actually started to fall again. And then again, recently it started to tick up, and it's the recent one more that I'm talking about. Like all of a sudden, everyone's like, "Hey, this guy gets open all the time." And now it's not always good when he gets open. Like sometimes the ball arrives and it's not good, but he might, again, I think he's the best route runner in this draft class and maybe the best separator in this draft class. And then the question is, how much of a concern for you are the ball skills collectively? But I think the more people that watch him just run routes, dice up defensive backs and do what he does, they're like, man, this guy's really good.
I heard our friend Charles Davis talking about this last night. He cited the combine. And how much do you weigh this? If you watch the film, and we both agree, by the way, we talk a lot about workouts and combine. It's a piece of the puzzle. It's also a way to describe players. We both agree that the tape is the most important thing. How a guy plays football is the most important thing. Now, everybody could come to different conclusions on the value, like what's on tape, right? When people say trust the tape, that's great, but your eyes and interpretation is still different than mine. The interesting prospects are the ones that we always say. Everybody agrees what the tape is, but disagrees on how to value it. Fine. Both in Concepcion, that might be where we're at, right? Which is
becoming that. Yeah.
Right. We see the route running, we see the athleticism, we see the dynamism, we see the drops and the inconsistent ball skills. A, how do you value that? B, can he improve it? And then C, let me throw what Charles said. At the combine, he didn't drop a thing. And so, do you ever watch a player and say, I see this on film, that was the fall. Did he spend his whole life, January through March, working on this so that he shows well at the combine? Is this something he can improve upon? Does he have that in his DNA?
Yeah.
Is he going to have a 3-drop season in the NFL? And we're going to say, this was silly. This
but
was
it's
like,
also,
talking about Jamar Chase's preseason drops. They were just, a blip in the radar,
There's also different levels of this where, again, it's not that we're not talking about a guy, I think, clearly where like he just simply does not have the ball skills to function at the NFL level. Like there are guys like that show up every now and again. You're like, this guy cannot catch. Like there's just no way that he's going to become a high-level NFL player. The way we've been describing Concepcion is that he's clearly not naturally gifted in terms of ball skills, right? There are people like Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson has rare, freaky ball skills, and that's how he can come down with that like one-handed catch against a defender in Buffalo where like I still don't understand how he came up with that football. Like, there are players like Randy Moss, the dude had just inbuilt, innate, freakish ball skills that are extremely rare. Obviously, he's not in that category. So he's somewhere in the middle, and somewhere in the middle is a line where it's like, if you're over that line in a negative way, it's going to be a problem at the NFL level. Now, will it be a problem every single year? No, not necessarily. So even though, like, the combine is really interesting because you watch his gauntlet drill and he's insanely smooth. And if you watch it full speed without really thinking about it, it's like he just plucks the ball out of the air, smooth, doesn't deviate from the line. It looks great. And then if you start to slow it down and really, like, focus on his technique, it's like he's still kind of clapping, towards with his hands. He's coming from way away. It's not like the hands aren't tight. There's a lot of separation between them. And a lot of those balls, he's kind of catching on the tail end of the football, which you can do because NFL gloves are like cheat codes these days, right? It's like stick them. Anything touches the ball, it's generally sticking. But the difference between that and catching kind of the correct side of the football and like the margin for error that gives you is significant, right? And maybe when he's running on air and there's nobody challenging it, it's all good and it won't be a problem. But maybe there will be a time in the NFL where he runs into a sequence of like contested catches or close coverage or whatever, and that's just enough to take you to the far side of that margin for error, and suddenly a bunch of those that would have been fine if nobody was near him are now drops or incompletions or pass breakups or whatever. And so this is where I'm saying, like, I think he's somewhere adjacent to that fuzzy line where it may or may not be a problem at any given year, right? And that's really the only discussion with him. It's like, if you get a couple of years where you catch the bad end of that variance, you might be looking at a guy and going, man, like Jerry Jeudy, right? You might be looking at a guy and going, he just doesn't make enough catches relative to how often he's open.
Right.
But he also might catch a good side of that variance for a few years, and you're saying this dude's open every play, and he gets, he's one of the most productive receivers in this draft class. Like, I think that's the debate with him, to me. It's like, I have no concerns whatsoever with all the other stuff. There's separation, again, the route running, maybe best in the class. That's my question with him is he going to be the right or the wrong side of that Jerry Jeudy line?
Yeah, and just to be clear, I don't think it's more than just citing drop rate, because it sounds silly if you're like, man, this guy has hands problems. He had 6 drops. He had 8 drops. Whatever your source is. He had 8 drops last year. And so and logically, it's like, that's only 8 plays, man. It's only 8. Like, what's the difference between 4 and 8 over the course of a season? But I think a good example of what you just said, and then, say Dane in the Beast. Here, the weaknesses for Concepcion: too many drops and double catches on his tape.
And that double catch thing is that. So that the gauntlet stuff that I was just talking about, right? If you're catching the back end of the football consistently because you've left too much gap between your hands when the ball arrives, a lot of those times you're going to have to try and readjust, right? Double catch it because it feels wrong in your hand. Like if you try and catch a football and it sticks at the bad end of it, like that feels like you're trying to grasp something that's just, it's wrong, right? So you instinctively readjust, right? And if you readjust at the time a defensive back is getting in there, suddenly that's how a ball pops out. And that technically is probably not going to go down as a drop, right? But it happened because you didn't catch it cleanly the first time. Right. That's the sort of stuff we're talking about.
So that was I just wanted to read, every one of Dane's weaknesses: drops and double catches, late to frame the football, leading to claps and body traps, unnecessarily jumps at the catch point, disrupting his focus. I mean, his first 3 are all
ball skills,
catching related.
And again, we talked before about the jumping when the ball arrives thing. Generally speaking, I think that's a massively overrated criticism that people have of players. I tend to default to the idea that if a guy jumped to catch a football when it arrived, there was a reason for that, right? Like, you don't tend to do that instinctively you don't tend to do that unless there's a reason for it, right? And we know the tape and angles, like it produces sort of freaky looking things where you're like, I don't see why a guy did that. And you see a different angle, you're like, oh, of course, it makes sense now. So my default assumption is generally if a guy jumped for the football, there was a reason for it and you shouldn't ding him for it. But I do think you can see it with Concepcion that you roll all of these things together and you see a sort of broad, below average level of ball skills.
You know what I like? I think what I hate worse is receivers who go to the ground all the time, unnecessarily. That was Dion Burks in this class. I hadn't gone back to his. I've seen a little bit of his 25 tape. I haven't dug in all the way yet on him, but he's a mid-round pick in this class. And a lot of people like Deion Burks, but he drove me nuts watching him. It felt like he always went to the ground on plays that's like just keep your feet and run run after the catch, whatever it may be. Even in the end zone, it's like it just felt like it was unnecessary. There's a few receivers historically where that drives me nuts the other way. They just go to the ground and lose either yak opportunities or make a catch. Really try to make sure that they make the catch and just lose the ability to catch and run or whatever it may be. Anyway, on the faller end since the beginning of the season, again, not to rehash everyone, but the players I would want to discuss, the two Clemson defensive linemen, Peter Woods and TJ Parker, because there's still a story here in the first round. Because, and then I have Garrett Nussmeier and Drew Allar, who we talked about earlier. But for Peter Woods and TJ Parker, this reminds me almost of people complain about the preseason poll in college football, right? You've got this preconceived notion for what a team is. Say Penn State last year. We thought they were going to be a national title team. Well, as soon as they lose 3 straight in the middle of the year, do you keep them ranked? What do you do with preseason polls? We thought they were good, and then they go like 1-2. Are they still good? Do our August opinions still matter in mid-September? What do you do? So Peter Woods and TJ Parker, chicken or the egg. Were they just overrated originally going into the season and they disappointed? Or they just were who they were? Or were they rated appropriately as potential top 10 picks, especially Woods was talked about as number 1 overall pick in this draft, and then they just completely disappointed and didn't develop. So, so I think this matters in where do they fall to, right? We're talking about 2 guys, especially Woods, who was talked about top 5. We talked about him with Renner yesterday. Are they just like late first rounders now? Or were they always mid-second, late second type of players? Where do they go in this draft? Because they just underwhelmed this year relative to expectations.
I think there's a big question when a guy comes into the draft off the back of a disappointing season relative to previous things. Like, is the important thing the fact that he showed you his ceiling at some point or other? Because, so much, you listen to Renner talk, so much of draft evaluation and scouting, it's like, what can a guy do, right? Show me the high end, show me his ability to do certain things, whether it's athletically or just on tape. And then that convinces me of his ceiling and what he could be at the next level, and then I'll kind of work out the kinks elsewhere, and hopefully we'll get the consistent play out of him. Obviously, there's some folly to that. Like, if you just chase guys that only have traits and don't actually pay attention to how well they play football, that's not good either. But I do wonder sometimes if the more important thing is to just see a season where he's played insane high-level football. I don't really care if it's the most recent one we saw, as long as you can give me a reason why he took a step backwards, as opposed to just showed up next year and it wasn't as good again. Because Derek Stingley. Derek Stingley came into the NFL off of not as good a year. Like, his best season was his freshman year, right? Yes. And that's been true for other players as well. On the other hand, you look at these on the big picture data wise, and you want to see him get better year after year, right? So I think that's an open question for all these guys that didn't have good years to end their career. Is the more important thing the fact that they showed you the talent to begin with, or is it actually pretty vital that they don't have a bad year to end their careers?
Yeah, and I'll give you some of my notes on Parker, because I think this is why he's going to land where he does. Testing-wise, he had a good vertical and broad and good 10-yard split, good 40. He tested fine, good arm length and everything. From 2024, I compared him to Latu a little bit as a technical winner, low pad level winner, but he didn't win with dynamism. And then I'm watching him this year, and I'm saying the same thing. I'm like, juice, the power, it's just not there. But he wins with pad level and technique. And I think that stuff for draft analysts, it's not sexy, and it's not like, man, got to have him in the top 15. There's a reason why Malachi Lawrence is going to be on our risers list we're going to talk about. There's a reason why David Bailey went from summer scouting, this dude has juice off the edge as a designated pass rusher, to now he might be going number 2 overall. TJ Parker doesn't have that, despite the testing. You don't feel it on film. But my bottom line on him was dependable, 3-down player, looks more like a number 2 rusher than a number 1. Like, if you get that in the 20 to 45 range in the draft, that's not bad, especially in this draft.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if the NFL, like if the Malachi Lawrences of the world who, feel like more home run types, That's going to be an interesting debate. Do you want TJ Parker almost, exemplifies this draft class of what, do you want to get the dependable Sonny Styles? Do you want to get the dependable Caleb Downs? Do you want to get Jeremiah Love? Well, how about at a value position? Do you want to get a guy that might just be like a number 2 in TJ Parker? And then Woods is similar, right? It's just, is he dynamic enough? Last year it was impressive because he kind of played on the edge a little bit. Remember what Christian Wilkins did that at Clemson, played on the edge and at 300 pounds and did well. Woods did that early in 2024. He was back in his natural position this year. This is where the big breakout was supposed to happen. He's got violent hands and movement skills are really, really good, and he's got agility, and it just didn't show up on film this year. And then he tested poorly. No length, and you might say, well, he never had the length. But it's just another box that you're supposed to tick, and he didn't tick it. He didn't have a great workout. He's not a special athlete or size, and production was mediocre relative to expectations.
Yeah.
So where does Peter Woods go? Is he a late first rounder, or is he just a second-round player? Because all second-round players are just like, they got some warts. They might not be special, but they could be starters.
That's the thing. There's that definitely question. There's also his career doesn't make any sense in that, the year before he was heavier but played more on the edge, and then he slimmed down and moved inside. Like that's backwards. That's not the way it's supposed to go. So I think you've got the first question, which is, look, is he actually as good as he was supposed to be all the way along? Like, did he ever have that kind of juice, that kind of impact? And then if you've decided he did, well, then you've got this question of, well, then why make sense of those last 2 years at Clemson, where at his heaviest he was playing on the edge more, and at his lightest he was playing inside more. And also, when he shed all the weight, why did he not pick up any athleticism, any explosiveness? And can he just play at the much bigger weight with whatever level of athleticism and explosiveness he has? I don't know. He's a very weird profile.
And if you just want to use PFF grades to break down the career arc and why it's tricky, 87 grade as a freshman, then an 83, and then down to a 72.5, right? So he's gone
the opposite way.
He's gone down. Now that was where if the fantasy people were doing breakout age and everything, broke out as a freshman, right? And there's something to that, right? Just stepping into the ACC as a true freshman. That's why he was a future number 1 overall pick. We're like, this dude was on the radar in 2023 because he looked great when he was young, and it just did not progress as expected. But I think the body of work still matters more than just the last year.
And
but it is a challenge because I know every evaluator wants to see arrow pointed up, not down.
But also that thing we talked about with Renner yesterday, which is, Clemson has got this pretty long history now of, I'd say, mismanaging defensive linemen, or at least not maximizing their development. So, helmet scouting is generally, I don't think, a particularly useful thing. But if you do have a particular institution that has a record at a specific position group of like not doing them favors, well, then you can potentially explain away, hey, how come Peter Woods looked really good the second he arrived on campus and got progressively worse throughout his entire career, which is effectively the trend line we're looking at. One answer to that might be, again, it's like, why would they play him when he was at his biggest on the edge, when he was at his smallest inside? That makes no sense whatsoever. Like, if it just turns out that Clemson generally mismanaged the career of Peter Woods, well, then if you're as a prospect looking at him going, well, there's good tape in here. It was just a while ago. If we get him in a much more sensible, pathway, if we set him up to succeed, then there's no reason he can't do that.
I want to see if, just on TJ Parker, I saw somebody in the chat mention that TJ Parker in particular is dealing with some family issues during the season, which I've heard, and I'm trying to see if, I know what it is. I just want to see if Dane has it.
Right.
If it's public. But there was something going down in his life during the year, and that's all a factor. I don't even know if he's got it specifically. So that's all, it's a factor, right? That's the type of stuff that you don't see, and we can only see what we see and describe what we see. That's what we've seen from Parker. I've heard, hey, he was dealing with some stuff off the field this year. That's not like nothing against him. It's nothing that he was doing. Right. So something to keep an eye on Parker, because I still like him. I think a team like Buffalo in the late first or New England in the late first, some of these teams that have been linked to edge rushers, or Seattle, could get a really good player in TJ Parker late first. Same thing with Peter Woods. I'll say one more thing here. Remember, Clemson had Rook Orororo a couple years ago go in the second round in like the top 40. Peter Woods, I think, is 10 times as good of a prospect as Rook. I mean, and look, that was only one team, the Falcons. They drafted him, but Rook was talked about going in the second round, and I think Woods is a much better prospect than Rook. So these guys should go, but they just overall were expected to go top 10 coming into the year. And then just to touch on Garrett Nussmeier and Drew Allar, I wrote those guys down because I thought they were in the mix to be first-round picks. Nussmeier he still will be a really interesting evaluation because he wins with QBing.
Yeah.
He wins with a mediocre arm, with anticipation, with smarts, but he also plays a little crazy. He plays. It's so funny. I remember I compared him to Greg Olson at Christian McCaffrey's wedding. It's kind of how he plays. Just like he's just like a wild man.
Drunk out of his
I'm
mind.
gonna hit the dance floor and just see what happens. We'll see what happens tonight. And so Nuss plays a little crazy, but he also plays with as good of anticipation as I've seen any college quarterback in the last 10 years.
And also doesn't have the size that we talked about with Mendoza. Like instead of being 6'5", 235 or whatever he is, he's 6'2", not even 6'1.5", and a hair over 200 pounds. Like he's small.
So that's what I'm saying. Like with Nussmeier, I wish he just had a good season because we'd be sitting here debating tools and size
That's the
versus
thing.
QBing.
He robbed us of that debate.
We would have had great discourse.
Right. Just take the guy that's an awesome, QB who doesn't have the physical tools versus look at this 6'5", 235 guy. Instead, it's like he had a
I could see it right now. You'd have like Mel and McShay, who generally lean toward maybe toolsier type of guys, saying, I don't really love Nussmeier. You'd have Greg Cosell, Kurt Warner, who care about quarterbacking and film a little bit more, although Greg likes bigger-bodied, strong-arm QBs too. I'm just trying to project, like, what would the conversation have been if Nussmeier had a good season? Yeah. What actually happened was he started out slow. He had an injury in camp that was like touch and go. You didn't get a lot of information about.
He may end up going day 3. I suspect he won't. It'll be day 2 sometime. But he, I think, cost himself a lot of money going back to school.
All right, man. That was anyone else as
so some other
fallers?
Not fallers. Some other people I think that have dramatically. I think Dillon Thienemen, the Oregon safety, has risen significantly throughout the process. Again, he was similar to Freeling, where it's like people liked him. And then the more the draft process went on, it's like, hey, keep an eye on him. He might go in the first round. And then, hey, he might get it's just been going up and up and up. Now
he might go top 10.
He's another guy where just the last couple of weeks, it's gone back the other way. Like he went, it's locked into the Vikings, or first round locked into the Vikings. Maybe he's a top 10 guy. Is he even better than Caleb Downs? And then just the last couple of weeks, it's like we've started to tap the brakes and maybe course correct, and maybe he started to slip back down again. But still, he went from, day 2 to locked into the first round somewhere throughout this process.
Let me give you a fun scenario here and try to pull some history from it. Bengals at 10. The Bengals had 2 draft scenarios 6, 7, 8 years ago. 6, 7. Remember they drafted William Jackson at corner. Mm-hmm. And then I think the very next pick, the Steelers took R.D. Burns.
Yep.
And at the time, we were like, man, this feels like the Steelers should have really wanted William Jackson. They needed a corner, and they went and got R.D. Burns. Maybe it was the next year or 2 years later, it went the other way, where the Lions drafted Frank Ragnow. The Bengals had a massive center need, and they drafted Billy Price in a bit of a reach, and it just felt like they went with the position that they really wanted. And the third scenario that comes to mind was Dallas a couple years ago. Didn't do this, but they wanted a corner badly. Patrick Surtain, J.C. Horn both come off the board. And then they settled for Micah Parsons, unfortunately, for the Cowboys. But they didn't reach for the next corner. But in those other scenarios, it felt like the Steelers said, we need a corner. And the Bengals said, we need a center. We just got to come away with a center. What if Caleb Downs goes top 9? And if Cincinnati comes in with the mindset that they just need a safety, I don't think that they will necessarily. But if they really have their heart set on Caleb Downs, and I heard Jordan Schultz talking on NFL yesterday too. He said, Downs just went to Washington, and he thinks that's his floor is 7 to Washington. So we're back to Caleb Downs being in the top 7 from some people. Giants at 5 could be in the mix. Commanders at 7. If that's the case, would the Bengals say, well, next safety up, Dillon Thienemen, like he becomes a top 10 type of player? Just throwing that out there. Like those are scenarios that have happened in the draft before where teams are so locked into this, we have to come away with this position, and we have players relatively close from a grading perspective. Could that be a scenario for Thienemen?
Yeah, possibly. A player that fell, and I think unlike a lot of these other ones where it's like just feels like a gradual swell of up or down, pressure in one of these things. Obviously, the combine kind of propels these things to a certain degree. One guy, though, I think dropped 10 to 15 spots overnight. Cashius Howell, the second we got an actual measurement on his arms, I think went from, if you look at the kind of charts, he went from like 20 overall, in kind of consensus ADP or whatever, right, to just he might not make the first round anymore.
Yeah.
And just the second we got a measurement on him.
I think that's what the second round is a whole bunch of players with maybe first round talent with the warts that you just don't want to take in the first round, right? It's size, it might be a slow 40 or something, might be an injury, whatever it is. There's something that moves you down there. I think that's why Howell could end up being a steal, in the 25 to 50 range, wherever he ends up going.
Yeah, he just obviously not just Ruben Bain level arm length, but like he's created a new 0th percentile by himself.
He didn't get remeasured either?
I don't think so. But he's gone from...
I need a 30 for 30 on why they didn't just get another arm, just to satisfy...
Whatever about Bain, who at least
teams
could convince himself that, like, it doesn't matter, like the Marvin Harrison Jr. thing. It's all on tape. Just go back to the tape. Tape speaks for itself. Cashius Howell, like, whoever's advising him should be like, there is literally no downside to getting remeasured here. You currently have the shortest arms ever measured for an edge rusher. What's the worst that could happen if we get the tape measure on it again? And you don't have, you do have the tape, but like, you don't have the draft stock right now where you can just say, look at my tape, it speaks for itself, draft me at number 8, right? Like, if you want to go in the middle of the first round, you need to put a better number out there. So let's take a shot that the guy at your pro day is going to give you a better number. I don't understand why his agent would not get him remeasured.
I need the 30 for 30 on why that happened.
I can at least understand the Ruben Bain side of it, where you're like, it's a red herring anyway. Don't focus on it. Who cares? And all, like, in his case, maybe it's actually a negative. If you do it again, it's as short as it was. Maybe he can argue, the combine guy is shortchanging everyone. It's another 1.5 inches longer, or whatever. I can at least get it from Ruben Bain's point of view. I do not understand why Cashius Howell would not get remeasured just in case.
All right, man. Any other first round discussions? Because I want to circle back to some of the recent risers and fallers.
No, I think that's probably it.
All right. So first, you got to tell you about FanDuel's new customers. They can bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's right. Turn $5 into $250 in bonus bets just for getting started. And when every possession matters in the playoffs, FanDuel makes it easy to get closer to the action, from player props on your favorite stars to all the tools you need to back them up. FanDuel puts player research right at your fingertips, so you can check stats, trends, and matchups all in one place and make your picks with confidence. It's everything you need all in one app, so don't miss your shot. Head to FanDuel.com/33rd to get started. FanDuel, play your game. 21 plus in select states. For Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino. 18 plus in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, 1-800-MY-RESET. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org. Call 800-327-5050 in Massachusetts. Call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY. Text HOPE-NY in New York. Call 877-770-7867 in Louisiana. Today we're talking the number 4 overall pick in the draft. Tennessee Titans hold the number 4 overall pick. Jeremiah Love's the favorite at plus 140. David Bailey at plus 550. Sonny Styles at plus 600. Tied with Arvell Reese at plus 600. Carnell Tate at plus 700. And Ruben Bain at plus 1,200 to go number 4. I'm surprised Bain's that low, because I still think he'd at least be in the mix there. Tate feels like a possibility at receiver. What are your thoughts on those odds for number 4 to the Titans?
Since the combine, it sounded like they're going Jeremiah Love, even though I think both of us would disagree with that. I I would disagree with it fairly significantly. I don't think that they can conclusively answer yes to the idea that they have the offensive line to support Jeremiah Love right away. Now, maybe you could argue, look, it's you do it for more than 1 year and we can fix that and blah, blah. Look, running back the first year is important as well. So I wouldn't do it. But it does sound like since the combine, not that it's been locked in, but that's been extremely likely to happen. That's
been one of the more common buzzy things coming out of Indy.
And unlike other years where it's like, well, if this blue chip player falls, of course they'll pivot. I don't know that there's the player that would cause them to pivot. You know what I mean? They might be looking at this draft class and saying there are no blue chips in it except, Jeremiah Love, except Caleb Downs or whatever. So I don't know that it even matters who the Jets pick, the pivot point at 2, like the first non-quarterback drafted. Oh, if the Jets draft Bain. The Jets draft Bain, and suddenly they might have an option between David Bailey and Arvell Reese, whatever. I don't know that it changes their mind. I think if they're locked in on Love, I think they're locked in on Love regardless of who's there.
All right, man, go check it out, FanDuel.com/33rd. I'll wrap up our risers and fallers and look at from a different lens recently, right? So we're looking at NFLMockDraftDatabase.com. They have a nice little tab with you can look at the last week, last 2 weeks, last month, biggest risers and fallers. I just picked a couple names that I found interesting on the riser category. 2 monster offensive tackles. And I think in part these feel like the risers that maybe the media's caught up to. You hear this all the time. There's no such thing as risers and fallers in the draft because the teams all know what they're going to do in January. It's not really true because they do care about the interviews. They do care about Senior Bowl and Combine. Like, guys do move on boards. But this feels like...
It's also, more people in the building are getting to the...
coaches.
The scouts may have been...
they're still finalizing boards right now. They're talking to coach. They have all their coach meetings over the last couple weeks.
If all the new people getting roped into the process are higher on him than the first area scout that did the profile to begin with, well, then he's going up the board.
Right.
And that's just the reality of things.
Boards are being finalized this week. We saw Eric DeCosta come out and say they have 197 draftable players.
And the coaches are the last people in the building to sort of get in on the draft process. If all the coaches are higher on that guy than the initial scouting people, then again, he's going up the board.
I like my process. I've got about 40 players that I would draft. And if you pare it down that well, I'm telling you, that's the way to do it. It's not like you run out of players by pick 40. There's 40 players throughout the draft that are worth drafting.
Yeah, but it does feel like you have to. I would be fascinated to see you operate a draft with those constraints, because you're going to get to a pick where
it'd probably be like 60 or 70. It'd be a little bit more.
Right.
I've tested. I'm the best. I have tested my drafting process. I'm the best drafting team in the NFL.
Right, but you do that without the outside pressure of being ridiculed when you draft a guy, a round higher than everybody else.
That's what makes the process so special. Is I would have taken JSN at 15.
I know, but I'm just saying.
You do best player available, based off the numbers, and you win over time.
But I suspect that you would cave immediately if you were a GM and you had the pressure of the media mocking you.
You have a little bit of like, well, you can't literally take 3 receivers in a row, and you can't literally take 3 safeties in a row. I get it. Just saying, we're getting to the best players.
You're susceptible to peer pressure.
I am,
and I don't think that's even.
You got to tighten up. You got to tighten up the board, though.
Is potentially an even lower level of pressure than general public ridicule.
It's 50 players. That's all you need. 50 players. 12 first rounders. That's it. 50 players. All right. Recent risers that I think may have just been favorites in NFL buildings anyway because they're massive human beings.
Yeah.
Travis Burke from Memphis, and then Markel Bell from Miami. Both guys 6'9". What's Burke? Bell's like 360. Burke's a huge human as well at Memphis. He's had a ton of visits, and they've both been climbing up the consensus boards into like the maybe late day 2, early day 3 type of range. Burke's listed at 6'9", 315. Bell's 365. And Duke Manyweather's a big fan because he works with him.
Does he?
Does he? He must.
I think someone was calling him out for that.
Okay. Duke likes him. Sorry, Duke.
Said it wasn't the case. I think.
Sorry, Duke.
No, maybe.
Whether you are or not, doesn't matter.
Burke
came in at 6'9", 332 with 35-plus inch arms. And then Bell, an absolute monster at Miami.
Yeah.
And tough to get around. He's got that, like, what's his name?
DeJuan Jones.
DeJuan Jones.
Yeah.
It's just tough to get around the huge guy.
He really does. I forget whose article it was, but there was an article talked about somebody who had interviewed a bunch of college coaches, asking them like, who are some players to keep an eye out, who are some sleepers maybe, but like guys that are not necessarily top NFL prospects, but were just really good players. And there was a coach that was talking about when they went up against Miami. They were like, we thought we were going to destroy this guy. They were like, we looked at his tape and we're like, oh, we're going to kick this guy's ass. And he's like, we just didn't. He's too big to get around. It doesn't always look good. The technique isn't necessarily what you want to see, but like he's too big to exploit. And that was a lot like DeJuan Jones. There were so many reps on his tape in college where it's like, it's ugly and he's clinging on for dear life. But the sheer distance that the player has to move to get around him at that size means he gets away with it, right? It feels like there's a lot of that on Markel Bell's tape.
And this is why I know people watched Caden Proctor and said, no way, like this guy was supposed to go top 10 and he disappointed and there's no way teams are going to love him. But he's got the size and the athleticism.
Yeah.
He's a similar sized human to Markel Bell, not as tall, but, similar size, but with great athleticism. Markel Bell's reasonable enough, movement-wise. Burke actually tested pretty well for his 332 pounds as well. But this is why the NFL does this. And this is why when we had this Will Campbell discussion last year and we started talking arm length and we talked wingspan and everything, like Will Campbell has to be perfect with his technique. He's got to have perfect pass set. He's got to be perfect with his hands. These guys are just like, if you can just get to a landmark, you can lean on them, cling on for dear life. They run the rip move, and you can hold them when they run the rip, and you just drag them to the ground. Like they have ways to win ugly, so to speak.
Well,
whereas like a guy like a Will Campbell doesn't have that ability.
Yeah, it's a little bit like the cornerback conversation that we have all the time. Like if you can get your hands on a receiver, it doesn't matter what he runs and what you run because he's no longer accelerating past you without any hindrance, right? The drag that you are creating by maintaining physical contact means the 4.3 that he runs and the 4.5 that you run is now offset, right? It's a bit like that with offensive tackles. If you can get a hand on him, if you can get physical contact, then it doesn't matter that to a degree, you can slow him down and just stop him running that hoop and making the play. Whereas a guy like Will Campbell, just because you're so large, right? Like the distance, again, that he needs to clear to be able to get all the way around you and make that play is huge. Whereas a guy with Will Campbell with A, short arms, and B, like historically short wingspan, so he's just a much tighter package. If they get the distance they have to cover is just a lot smaller.
And then on Travis Burke from Memphis, fascinating career for him. So 6'9", 332, 5-year player. He started at Gardner-Webb for 2 years, or played at Gardner-Webb for 2 years. He's a 4-year starter across Gardner-Webb, 2 years at FIU, and then Memphis. So he improved, right? He kept moving up, but landed in the AAC in Memphis, and his best year was his last year against his best competition. So he's a guy, like if you just looked at 1 year, he looks pretty good. He's coming off of his best season, but he kind of struggled at FIU, and it's not cliche to say pad level issues. I mean, dudes get under his pads. He's got a little waist bendy to him and everything, but he definitely feels like the type of person that I think an offensive line coach says, yeah, give me that guy. We're talking like Jalen Travis last year was the developmental mid-rounder that came good, went from Princeton to Iowa State, stepped in, did a nice job at right tackle for the Colts last year, and might be the right tackle of the future there. I think that's what teams are looking for with Markel Bell, Travis Burke. Get him in, and Burke in particular need a little bit more development, but the arc is there, and you might steal a starter in the mid-rounds with massive size. So those guys are on the rise. Georgia Tech defensive tackle Jordan Vandenberg is getting a ton of hype. He's going to be another fascinating one where I don't think the production was great, but the workout was borderline legendary. Let me find that really quick. He had a really good workout at 6'3", 310. Okay production across Penn State and Georgia Tech over the last few years. He came in at 310 pounds, ran a 4.94, but the 10-yard split was 1.61 as a defensive tackle. Wasn't that like Chris Jones? Was like Chris Jones right around 1.6 or like 1.5 something? Remember Chris Jones combine?
Yeah. Yes.
Unfortunate.
Just saying. Just wondering. 35 bench reps. If you're doing the bench still,
Fair play.
add a round.
Add a round.
Right? Like in the positive direction. Deduct a round, whether you're going higher, just by benching still. 36-inch vertical, 98th percentile, 96th percentile broad, and a 4.19 shuttle, 99th percentile for Jordan Vandenberg from Georgia Tech. So a pure athletic projection here. We've got Oscar Delp, the tight end from Georgia, getting a lot of hype. I see Dane's got him at 4. I think Hayden Winks has him at
Yeah, Hayden and Josh Norris were both, I think, pretty high on him.
Are Hayden and Josh, I don't not see their content, but I try to avoid other NFL opinions other than like what comes through on social. Not that I don't respect them, it's just my own biases I'm trying to avoid. Do they end up on the same page on a lot of prospects, or do they diverge?
No, they end up, more often than not, I think they end up seeing the same things, articulating the same things, and being, broadly speaking, on the same page with the prospect they're talking about.
But they've got Delp pretty high. I think you're seeing a lot more hype from him. I think he's got some good move tight end ability from Georgia. And then I would say the biggest one, both from the beginning of the season and recently, is Malachi Lawrence. Continues to rise and remains a favorite to go in the first round here.
Yeah, he's definitely
UCF edge rusher.
Massively. He's in that bucket that we talked about before, like the entire pre-draft process. He's just been going up and up and up. I mean, Renner was talking about him yesterday of like when they were doing the Shrine Bowl stuff, he was like the other edge rusher at UCF. And now he's becoming the guy that like is going to go, maybe into the first round.
We get that Shrine Bowl footage. You can see the length and athleticism in there. He'll have some nothing rushes in there as well. He's a projection with all the tools, Malachi Lawrence. But it comes back down to what you value, right? So we had John Ledyard on the show last week, and he very clearly articulated what he values in edge rushers, and Lawrence ticks those boxes. A guy like T.J. Parker doesn't. I think Parker could be a good, dependable player. I think Lawrence, the upside play at edge rusher, I kind of get, but sometimes it takes a couple years for those types. So we'll see. He's definitely on the rise. The recent fallers are a bunch of players that I liked, or a couple players that I liked. Eric McAllister from TCU, I think he's got some off-field question marks. He's a good physical receiver that I do like. I'm not sure what happens off-field. Eric Rivers from Georgia Tech, I thought would be getting more hype. He's way down on consensus boards right now. He's got some of that second-level downfield juice. And then Alabama edge rusher or defensive lineman, L.T. Overton. He's another one. I don't know if it was fake originally because he's kind of got like a J.C. Latham at defensive line type of body, like Quadzilla look. He's listed as an edge, doesn't really have edge rush juice. He's kind of a tweener body type wise with okay production. And then you have the fact that I think he was recruited by Saban, and now he's got the new coaching staff there at Alabama. So how much, like Renner was talking about, Bama used to have all these second and third round players just because they went to Bama.
Right.
But they were good, technically sound players, right? They learned from that old school 3-4 how to shed blocks, hand position. They learned how to play. And I don't know if like Overton was just getting that, he's Alabama defensive lineman, get that bump, and just never really materialized. So he's falling a little bit on consensus.
The players may not be any different than they were before. They're just not getting Saban's coaching.
Right. And again, I don't know what Saban's coaching might be like. All right, now we get to see this guy. A'Shawn Robinson's at his ceiling, and Jerron Reed, they're at their ceiling, and we know what they are, and they'll plug and play in the NFL. Is this more intriguing for Bama players because they don't have the same kind of savant working with them on the defensive side of the ball? So those are some of the more recent names that came up as risers and fallers. Do you have any other names you want to touch on or
no
players? Okay, then. I didn't get back to what I'm doing here. So we're going to talk about our hits and misses. I think this is going to be fun. We're going to take a little trip down memory lane, as I said. But first, quick break to talk about our friends over at Root Insurance. You got to fire up the mock draft sim if you can for our roadside assistance. That's what we're going to be doing here. Root Insurance believes that good drivers deserve better rates, so they've created a new kind of car insurance that rewards good drivers in an easy-to-use app. Traditional car insurance companies focus on demographics like age, zip code, occupation, and credit score to price your coverage. But when Root offers a rate, your behavior behind the wheel gets more weight than any other single factor. They don't use occupation or education level to negatively affect your rate. While you drive, Root gathers and analyzes data from your smartphone sensors, and after a few weeks, You get a car insurance quote based primarily on your driving. Save up to 44% off your initial Root quote after you take the test drive. If you need a tow truck, jump start, or lock your keys in the car, Root will cover the help you need to get back on the road when you opt into roadside assistance. The Root app makes it easy to edit your coverage, update your policy, or file a claim in just 3 minutes. You get started today at Root.com. And today we are providing roadside assistance for the Kansas City Chiefs, a team with 2 first-round picks, number 9, number 29. We're going to do a little 3-round mock here with the Chiefs.
Yep.
I've
got Pro Football Network's mock draft sim fired up.
It's
a golden age of mock draft sims. They're everywhere.
Just dabble everywhere.
You've got,
it's an arms race even.
Whatever the entity formerly known as PFFs is, you've got theirs. You've got Pro Football Network. You've got Underdogs out there with a sim. There's sims everywhere. You don't know which one to use.
I had a dream once, Sam.
That
when I had a draft site back in 2012, my initial site was doing mock drafts with your friends. It was more interactive rather than you just going out there. But it was a little bit of both. Like I had not that I'm not the only one that had this idea, but that's what I wanted to build years ago. That you and your friends would do it together and interact, and because there was a golden age of. Remember, there was internet mock drafts all the time, early 2010s. You'd be like, hey, you want to do this 32-team mock with us? I feel like everybody was doing it, and then you'd be on like Blog Talk Radio talking about it. I mean, it was a whole golden era of early draft internet coverage. Anyway, yeah, there's a lot of sims everywhere. What's PFN have for us here at 9?
Okay. Well, first thing that's happening is we're getting a trade offer from the Dallas Cowboys at number 12.
Got to take it.
So the Cowboys are offering us pick 12, pick number 92, their second-round pick next year, and their third-round pick next year. But we also have to give back 74.
That's ludicrous.
We moved down in the third round.
I should have given up way more in my Saints trade in the mock the other day.
So we give up pick 9. We move down in the third round, but we pick up a second and a third next year.
I would do. Who's on the board right now? Is Bain? If Bain's on the board,
Ruben Bain is on the board.
I think I'd go Bain here if I'm the Chiefs.
Reject this trade for Ruben Bain.
Oh man, is Delane on the board?
Yep. Ruben Bain, Caleb Downs, Delane, Freeling, McCoy, Fano, Tyson. These are all on the board at the moment.
Okay, so I could play this game. I could stomach at 12 taking Downs,
those guys.
Downs, Bain, McCoy, or one other person that was in there. There's 4 people that I can handle taking at 12.
Right.
I would love to have Bain at 9.
3 picks to clear.
All right, let's do it.
Taking it.
Let's trade down.
Okay, so then I'm not going to.
Look, you're my analytics guy feeding me the draft, and I'll make a call.
Yeah. So the 3 picks that went off the board when we did that. Ruben Bain.
Yep.
Next.
I love that, by the way. Dallas trading up to 9 for Ruben Bain.
Somebody
That's realistic.
so Kuiper, McShay, and Dane, I think, all had a mock draft yesterday, and all of them had Dallas trading up to 6, I think, or trading up somewhere.
Yeah.
I can't remember if
a lot of smoke around the Cowboys
right.
trading.
I can't remember if they were all for the same player. I think they were, but
which by the way, I don't think makes a ton of sense because they just have the 2 firsts.
Right. Anyway, in this mock, Dallas traded up for Bain. Caleb Downs went to the Bengals at 10, and then Jermon McCoy was the first corner off the board to 11, which means Mansour Delane is available.
So I'm willing to do this because I love Delane as a player.
Correct.
And I completely understand the Chiefs' history, and they found 3rd rounders and 7th rounders in the whole thing.
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean you can.
They also
pass
drafted, the corner they just traded away for 2 first-round draft picks.
Yeah.
They drafted him in the first round. It's
McDuffie,
not like they won.
Right. And they traded up to get him.
So it's not like they refused to draft first-round corners.
I don't know. I think Delane's in a similar prospect bucket as Trent McDuffie with movement skills and ability to maybe play inside if they really wanted to. But an outside corner, that's awesome. Give me Delane at 12 here.
Done.
With the Chiefs.
All right.
And what do we have at 29?
29. Available players. So
Denzel Boston, man. Give me Denzel.
We've got Mesidor's available, Blake Miller, Colton Hood, Christian Miller, Zion Young, Ty Simpson, Denzel Boston, Jacob Rodriguez, Avion Terrell, Chase Basantes, blah, blah, blah. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. Mesidor would be pretty spicy at that spot.
Mesidor's really interesting. I could buy it. He's probably Karlaftis' age. They might be the same age.
But isn't that like a perfect, 29 for a guy with that kind of weird profile, but also crazy potential? He could be really good. like, so we were talking, you mentioned Eric DaCosta talking about the older players, right? And how it used to be 4% of the board or whatever, was 24.5 or over, apparently, is their cutoff line for old. And now it's up to 18%. And
Wow.
this is bad, he says, right? This is a negative thing. But he also said we don't really know what that means yet. Like, it's a new
Not enough
world,
information,
right? This is
yeah.
what we've been saying. Where was I going with that?
Something about Mesidor and what we do with it.
Yeah. I can't remember what my point was going to be on that, other than, he mentioned and brought it up. But with a guy like Mesidor, you can see he could, that's the contract thing, right? And actually, I don't think this was from the Eric DaCosta thing, so that was just an irrelevant side. But somebody else was talking about, like, the fact that these guys might be only 2 contract players, not 3 contract players. Like, maybe that was from Eric DaCosta.
We might not even be alive for second contract.
Who knows? Well, nobody is good enough at drafting to be thinking about the difference between a second and a third contract player. Like, that's just, to me, that is a complete and total waste of time of everybody's energy in this entire process.
It's one of those buzz phrases. Like, it's one of those things I would want to avoid. Like, you never hear this guy's a 10-year starter about a receiver or a tight end. You only hear that about offensive linemen, right? Like, this guy's a 10-year starter.
Yeah.
Like, you only hear that. It's not even true. Like, nobody drafted Mercedes Lewis in 2006 like, man, this dude's going to be in the league 19 years. We could see it. We know it. Well, he is. Here he is. He's heading to year 20. You don't know this stuff. And you don't know which position, like Drew Dahlman just retired, right? Was it Dahlman? After 5 years, a 10-year starter, only offensive lineman. So, like, we have to sunset all those terms.
Well, it is a thing, right? Like, if you draft an older player and he ends up working out and being really good and you want to keep him in your building for his entire NFL career, yeah, you might end up being the difference between a second and a third contract in a given player. My point being, the overall strike rate of everybody drafting, particularly once you get outside of, the top 10 or whatever, is so low that the difference between a second and a third contract on a player that probably won't be good because everybody's strike rate sucks, right, is such a small difference in this entire process that for it to even come up as a difference in anything is ridiculous to me. Like, it's a total waste of time. It's like, I can't even think of a good analogy of what that would be, but it's such a small thing. It can't possibly be anything more than the absolute tiebreaker of all tiebreakers. Like, everything we have is even. So the fact that this guy might be a third contract versus a second contract is a tiebreaker.
Again, I'd say it has less to do with, it has a little bit to do with the contract stuff, at least the second contract, right? If you think a player's going to start hitting the decline at age 30, 31, that's a factor. The second factor is bias. When you're watching his film, you're watching a 25-year-old, and if you treat him in your head like he's a 22-year-old, that's your bias creeping in. And the third one is you have to adjust for it analytically. Again, like baseball does, age-adjusted production matters in sports. And so what do you do with that with Mesidor, right? So he's a 25-year-old in the ACC, and you can't just say, well, he's as good as Ruben Bain, like they're 4 years apart.
These are all things that should come up way before you start going, man, what if this is...
I agree.
What if we can't
Those
give
are
him a
the
third
things
contract?
to consider, not like, will we be able to sign him in 2037?
Anyway, I think Mesidor at 29 would be really good value.
So I love that. But...
I already did. I pressed it.
I was going to make the case for Denzel Boston.
No.
Is Boston there with their second rounder?
He is not.
Now I'm upset.
Now, Pro Football Network's draft sim does have an undo pick button, but I don't want to do it because I think Mesidor is the right pick.
I was going to make a case for Denzel Boston there.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he's the next Keon Coleman.
Right.
I don't think he's the next big-bodied receiver. I do think he's got a great feel for the receiver position that Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs need on the outside.
I mean, look, I think that Mesidor is a better player than Denzel Boston. Obviously, cross-comparing positions always a futile enterprise, but I think he's a better player, and I like the depth at wide receiver in this draft class. I think we can come back and get someone later.
Yeah, depth in every receiver draft class. We'd get like a Sky Moore in the second round. Talk about him
maybe
later.
A better player.
All right.
So we're
What's
up at
available
40.
next year?
40. Now, here's the flip side of my confidence. Zion Young is available at pick number 40. Malachi Lawrence is available at pick number 40.
Let's ignore that and pretend that the market's correct and he'll go in the first.
Cashius Howell is available at pick number 40. So edge rushers are available at pick number 40 was my point. Jacob Rodriguez is available. Avion Terrell is available. Chris Bell is the next wide receiver available. TJ Parker is also available. Lee Hunter, AJ Halsey. What else?
A couple names for you here.
Jeremy Bernard.
You mentioned Jeremy Bernard. Eli Stowers.
Eli Stowers.
He might be lower. I don't know where he's going to land on boards, but he's going to be an interesting one.
Eli Stowers is available.
He's going to be an interesting
Jeremy
one.
Bernard at this spot, I think, would be good.
That's high for him.
I don't think it is.
It's high for him.
I don't think it is. I think he's good.
I don't want to double up at edge. I don't think we need to do that. Went defense twice.
There's linebackers available. Rodriguez, Anthony Hill Jr.
Now, Rodriguez might be too good to pass up
That's what I'm saying.
at 40. I'd be willing to do that.
All right, I'm doing it. I'm pressing the
Now we went all defense, but we have a Leo Chanel, a Trent McDuffie replacement in both of those players, and we have the pass rusher that we need if we're the Chiefs.
And we have a pick.
And we have another pick coming up.
So 92. 92, let's see. What have we got?
Bernard might still be there.
Bernard is not still there. How dare you. Wide receivers, if we limit ourselves to that for the moment.
Ted Hurst.
Wide receivers / tight ends, I guess. Ted Hurst is not. I think he's gone. Elijah Surratt is available. Michael Trigg, the Baylor tight end, is available. Brennan Thompson, the speedy Mississippi State wide receiver, is available. Wide receivers did kind of fly off the board at that point. Kendrick Law.
Just get Brazel there.
No.
How about a Max Clare?
I think we had a real run on wide receivers. Malachi Fields is available.
How's Max Clare? Is he there? Ohio State.
I thought I
tight
saw
end?
him. Yeah.
I would take Clare there.
Offense tight end. Yeah, Max Clare's there. Max Clare, Michael Trigg, Eli Raridon, Dallin Bentley, who we talked about yesterday.
I like Max Clare. I think you've got a receiving weapon. Stowers is gone, I assume, right?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, done. So
we fixed the Chiefs. Roadside assistance for the Chiefs.
With our draft for the first 3 rounds of the Kansas City Chiefs, we got Mansour Delane at cornerback. We got Akeem Mesidor on the edge. We got Jacob Rodriguez at linebacker, and we got Max Clare, and we picked up Dallas' second and third round pick next year.
I think what this shows is what they're capable of with their picks. I mean, we like all those picks, obviously. People just hear names like, I don't like those players. I would have gone other ways. But they have a chance, the Chiefs, to have impact players or use that draft capital to continue to flip it into next year.
Well, that's one where, I think that's a good haul, but there will be people coming out of that draft like they did with the Browns last year, and we're like, well, you didn't address the need. You didn't address wide receiver, which is true, but still.
We got Max Clare. There's our Travis Kelce replacement when he retires in 5 years, whenever that may be. All right, there we go. Roadside assistance for the Kansas City Chiefs. Check it out, root.com. All right, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Draft hits and misses, historically here. We're going to go back in time. Some of our hits and our misses. We've both made lists. We will present to each other. There's a couple where we've been, I put down as both.
Yeah.
We were both in on players that went south or out on players who we were right on, whatever it may have been. Do you want to go first? Present players to me. What do you want? How do we want to do this?
All right.
Start with our hits, misses.
Yeah. Start with hits.
Okay.
We'll get to the misses are more fun. We'll get to those later.
Okay.
I think your crowning draft take achievement was your absolute hatred of Tyree Wilson as a prospect.
Not as a person.
Where everybody else had him going. So there was three opinions on Tyree Wilson. There was the growing consensus that he was going to go in the top 10 somewhere, and he was right up there with Will Anderson Jr. Maybe he was better. Maybe he should go ahead of Will Anderson Jr. Then there was, I think, most people in the draft community who were like, man, I don't really love Tyree Wilson. I feel like he's more of a mid-first rounder than he is a top-end first rounder. And then there was you, who, when we were trying to put together the sort of consensus PFF draft board, was like, I would put him 187th in this list. And we were like, you can't do that.
He went from, like, everyone else had him in the top 10, and all of a sudden, the PFF board, he ended up at, like, 28.
Well, we were trying to just, like, everyone rank your guys, and then we'll just average it out, and that's where the board will land, right?
and everyone else had him somewhere between like 10 and 30. And you had him at like 187th. It was dragging him down you were dragging him down like a round and a half all by yourself.
So the story behind that is I don't believe in vertical boards. I don't think they're useful. I don't think they're needed by NFL teams. I don't think you need to have if Eric DeCosta has 197 draftable players, I don't think you need to rank them 1 to 197. I don't think that's useful to draft because in your 7 to 10 players. And so I don't do that. I don't look at things horizontally, and I think that the consensus board or information that you have is the market, so to speak. So my theory is essentially pick players in and around where their market value is, but pick the right guys, right? Pick from a small pool of players in and around where they're supposed to get drafted. And so when you guys charged each other with, we have to make a vertical board, I said, okay, I have to math this up a little bit and figure out where this would be. Because Tyree Wilson was just a guy I'm like, let someone else draft him. I don't care that he goes in the top 10. I would never do it. And so I just, did the math and it was like, yeah, 180, sure, whatever it was, 130, whatever the number was. And so that's how we came up with it because I was forced to put a number to it. So we'll take it as a win. Mm-hmm. Most of your wins are receivers. So I'll give you what I think is the best one. I'll give you two that I think were great. Laquan Treadwell, similar to the Tyree Wilson. Laquan Treadwell and N'Keal Harry.
Yeah.
They were both big-bodied receivers, especially Treadwell. He had multiple years of buzz at Ole Miss, multiple years of solid production. Ended up going, 21 to Minnesota?
Something like that.
And then N'Keal Harry went at 32 to the Patriots. Harry was not as hyped as Treadwell, but Treadwell was supposed to be like this wire-to-wire top 15 type of pick. And you were out on Treadwell and on N'Keal Harry all throughout the process.
Yeah, never really saw it in either guy, and they were the classic kind of poster children for if the first thing you're telling me about a guy is all of his contested catches. It's like that's a bit of a red flag more than it is a positive in their bucket. There was also like people, I remember with Treadwell in particular, people started talking about his run blocking to some absurd degree. Like, this guy's the best blocking running receiver you're ever going to see. And yet a bunch of the blocks weren't even, like, they were like the peel back stuff, right? Where you just have to decleat a guy because he's heading in your direction. It wasn't even like good high-end run blocking. It was highlight stuff. And it's like, he's not actually good at the receiver stuff. And that feels like a problem.
Yeah. I don't want to, I think wide receiver run blocking, the Hines Ward stuff is so overrated anyway. But
I don't even think it's necessarily overrated. But again, it's like, so it's what you're showing me, like, and why you're focusing on this as opposed to other things. Like, if even guys that are very good run blocking wide receivers, it's not going to be the first thing you start talking about. It's not going to be the second or the third thing you start talking about. It's like, oh, and by the way, he's a really good run blocking wide receiver, right? Like, somewhere down the list. But like, nobody, that wouldn't have been the thing you talked, like Larry Fitzgerald, right? Larry Fitzgerald was a really good run blocking wide receiver. How far down the list of traits would that have showed up?
Way down.
Right. Whereas when it's like one or two, immediately that's raising a red flag of, well, why are we not talking about more of the wide receiver things?
What's interesting here is the early 2000s, we started to see 6'4" receivers drafted all the time.
Yeah.
And some hit and some missed, but the hits were Calvin Johnson, and then 2011, you have Julio Jones, you have A.J. Green. We went through this golden age of 6'4" receivers, right?
Yeah,
that were
like,
awesome.
Well, the number one.
But then we started to, but I feel like we also got into like, oh, if this dude's 6'3", 6'4", that's the guy, that's who I want. But it was like both extremes of, future Hall of Famers and just utter busts of, big-bodied receivers who just didn't have the dynamism and ability to separate.
The run of Randy Moss, Terrell Owens, and Calvin Johnson really kind of broke what everybody was chasing at wide receiver.
Yeah.
Like three.
And that was over an 8-9 year period.
Yeah, but like within a decade, effectively, three of the greatest wide receiver talents and players of all time came along. And so that became what everybody was chasing from a body type. Now, those guys are different body types, but they're all very tall, very fast, and very good, right? So it became, well, now the number one X receiver that you're looking for has got to be 6'3" minimum. He's got to be 210 pounds minimum. He's got to be able to run a 4.35. And if then that's what you were chasing. So suddenly every receiver that fit those buckets was being drafted in the top 10, and some of them were not very good players.
Yeah. So you were able to see, I think you saw those pretty well. DJ Chark on your list. We just throw a bunch of them in there. Chark you were out on. And I don't think people loved him, but some people did.
Yeah.
Enough people loved DJ Chark.
A lot of people liked him.
And you put a question mark next to it because
he had
good seasons, but never had the long-term career as far as an impact goes.
This is the thing with NFL players, even retrospectively sometimes it's difficult to kind of highlight, A, what was that as a career? And B, is that good? Like I've seen people saying Baker Mayfield is a bust, right? Because he was the number 1 overall pick, and now he's just a reasonable quarterback for somebody else. Like that's a bad pick. And now it's a bad pick if you say, well, you could have had door number 2, Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, and also let's assume that those things would have continued. Their arcs for Buffalo and Baltimore, respectively, would have been the same in Cleveland, right? I think the chances of either of those things being true are pretty minimal, but let's assume it is. It's only a bad pick in comparison to that. But in comparison to you could have drafted Josh Rosen. Well, then it's not a bad pick. You drafted a good player, and okay, you then tossed him to the street after a few years. But you can't say Baker Mayfield was a disaster. Anyway, my point being, in a world where people are prepared to argue that Baker Mayfield was a bust of a draft pick, I don't know that you can ever come to consensus about whether DJ Chark was a good or a bad pick.
Right, and Baker's absolutely not a bust, though we'll mention him in our misses we talked about last week because we had higher expectations.
But like I said, there are people out there that argue that it is, at which point it becomes hard to definitively declare anything a win or a loss.
Let's lump some of these players in together. Let's go. Your turn now. Present to me my wins.
So I think you deserve credit for highlighting Puka Nacua as a sleeper at the time, but he was definitely a guy that you were talking up repeatedly as a guy, the model. The model liked him. The mid-rounds, he was your guy, and he's turned into one of the best receivers in the NFL.
That was a good year for the model at receiver. Puka Nacua, Parker Washington both showed up as our my sleepers that year. I think that was the same year it loved Tank Dell and Josh Downs. I threw Downs on my list as well. Because remember, our reasoning there was we don't love Zay Flowers. Maybe people could call that a miss for us because he's become a pretty good, productive player. But our whole point was, hey, you could get Downs in the third.
Yeah.
You can get Downs late. We thought maybe in the second. You get Downs later instead of Zay in the first.
Or Tank Dell.
Or Tank Dell. And I think that ends up being a win for us. Yeah, Puka, I'm not going to be there's a lot of revisionist history going
Had him
around
in the first
NFL,
round.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, we all... my biggest regret is I love this Puka Nacua guy, and no one listened to me in the building. I'm not saying that, but things. I do have a text exchange with Zach when he was with the Rams, saying keep an eye. Now I sent him other receivers too who didn't pan out, but so
that's not the point.
We don't need that.
I'm not claiming your strike rate is 1,000.
This is victory lap time.
Yeah,
it's victory lap time.
I'm saying that you were abnormally high on Puka Nacua, and that's turned out well.
All your wins seem to be receivers here. So you have Cooper Kupp on there. Where did you have Cooper Kupp?
I really like Cooper Kupp because that year I had done a bunch of Eastern Washington games for PFF grading.
That's right.
So I really liked this guy immediately all the way along. Then he started to sort of ascend in the draft process. Then he ran the 4.6 or whatever it was. I'm like, yeah, but look at this Oregon game where he's torching them deep. Like, this is not a guy who's limited by a 4.6. I really loved Cooper Kupp.
You had Terry McLaurin that you really liked.
Yeah, because remember that year that was the year where I convinced myself that the most telling pre-draft data point was, do you barbecue everyone at the Senior Bowl?
Yeah.
And Terry McLaurin was one of the best graded players the PFF had ever had at the Senior Bowl. The dude was wrecking everybody. So I was big on Terry McLaurin that year.
The one other one that you did not come off of despite other people around you was Jahan Dotson. And so it was 2022. That was the year, right, when all those receivers went in the first round. So you've got Drake London, you've got Garrett Wilson, you have Chris Olave, Jamison Williams, and then the next two off the board, I believe, Jahan Dotson and Treylon Burks.
Right.
So you had 6 receivers going the top 18, plus A.J. Brown was traded for. Big receiver year. And you were a little bit lower on Dotson during your process. And then we had Chris on the show. And I always enjoyed talking to Chris around draft time because he just had and I had some a lot of crossover in how we
Right.
learned the game and saw the game. And Chris always had a completely different view. And again, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. Completely different view on things. And he talked to people around the league, so he brought some great insight in our draft discussions. And he loved Jahan Dotson. He loved him. He thought he was top 15. He really liked Dotson. And I think you even reconsidered at the time, like, man, maybe what did I miss? And then didn't he start his NFL career really good?
That was like the Chark
Early
one,
on.
where it's like for a while I was really worried that was going to be another complete whiff because, he had his first year was pretty solid. Chark, I think it was year 2 for him, but there was a year at least for both those guys where it looked like they were going to be solid players, and then it eventually turned into a pumpkin, and he became the player that I expected him to be. Dotson, he can't separate. Never has been able to. Like, he's only ever been a good zone player where he understands where the spaces are and he can get into the gap and settle, but like, he's not someone that separates or gets open to a high degree and never has been, and that's not good.
So you've had a pretty good, just eyeballing it, pretty good strike rate on receivers. You have a miss in there that we'll talk about.
We'll get to that. Yeah, there's been some spectacular misses, but
let's go through the rest of my hits, and then we'll get into our misses. I'll get into some of your hits as well. We'll finish up yours.
Yeah.
I took Trey, but we'll put that with both of us. That was both of us.
I think, is a good one. Josh Downs is a good hit for you. I also, I would give you a lot of credit for the Desmond King one as well.
So Desmond King, Iowa corner, and super productive early PFF years. Good numbers there, and we thought he might go in the second round. And he fell to the 5th, and the Chargers, turned him into a really good slot corner and had a really nice career.
Yeah,
so he was one of the early production players.
Let's quickly fly through the hits for sort of both of us.
Okay.
Because I think the most obvious one is Christian Hackenberg, and that it comes up every draft season.
Every show we mention the poor guy's name.
I mean, yeah. It's interesting because on the one hand, I don't like being, this guy's garbage, right? I don't like that as a draft thing because these are all 20-something-year-old kids trying to make it in the NFL, blah, blah, blah. The only reason I felt comfortable doing that with Hackenberg, like I literally said he was undraftable. I wouldn't have drafted Christian Hackenberg. Like I wouldn't have, if you gave me a 6th or a 7th round draft pick and said, do you want to roll the dice on a quarterback? Even in this world of always roll the dice on a quarterback, I'm like, no, I don't even think it's worth it. I think the chances of him becoming an NFL player are so minimal that I will take that 6th or 7th round pick and I'll draft the kid from Nigeria who just jumped 40 inches like rolling off the couch, right? I'll take that swing rather than a Hackenberg swing. The only reason I felt comfortable saying that is because the hype around him was so insane, he was going to go in the first couple of rounds. Like, he's going to be fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's going to make a lot of money out of the NFL, even if he only lasts through that rookie contract and bounces. And so, it's fine. I'm not harming his financial well-being going forward. But there was just nothing. It was a case built off nothing. It was his high school stats were garbage. His good year at Penn State was built off him just YOLOing the ball up to Allen Robinson and letting him go ham on 50-50 catches. Everything, he didn't even have the physical tools that people argued that he did. There was literally nothing you could hang your hat on and say, this is the reason he's going to be good in the NFL. His accuracy was bad, his decision-making was bad, his tools weren't even particularly good, and at no point in his entire football playing career had he ever put together a statistically impressive output. So why would he be good at the NFL level?
And we were purposely trying to make take a stance at that time because we were 3-4 years into having new data and information, and we were trying to say, look, we didn't have this information 5 years ago.
Right.
And this is clear as day. There's nothing translatable to the NFL here, so we were purposely going over the top and saying, taking a stand there. We also didn't have in a lot of, I remember I used to talk to Trent Dilfer before the draft all the time, and he worked with all these kids through Elite 11 and everything. He goes, just be ready. He's going late first or into the second. I said, Trent, there's no way. There's no way.
It's like, but why?
He's like, there's 5 teams, like they're on him. And a lot of it was based off excuses. And there were people, I never forget this, like there were people that I worked with Trent in the Elite 11 group for a couple of years, and Sam Darnold's one of my players, Super Bowl champion Darnold. But I was there like when Kyler was there and Darnold and Rosen and everything, and we talked about all these players. And one of the guys on the staff was like big believer in Hackenberg. And he came back to me years later. He goes, man, I learned a lot through that whole process because a lot of the argument in his favor was like the system, and you don't understand. There's too much pressure, and they were blaming Franklin and the offense, and there's a lot of blame going around.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times when we come out of the scouting process, you're like, "What's your learning? What are your learnings?" It kind of goes back to if you're pounding the table for Laquan Treadwell because of run blocking, I think you're missing the bigger picture. And if you're pounding the table for Hackenberg because there's 97 excuses for why he did not play well, then it might not be the right path to go down.
Yeah, it's like, what is the argument for him being good based on? And there was never any substance to any of it. It was always like, well, this is why the numbers aren't whatever. This is why. Like, you're right. It was a bunch of the reasons why the profile looks bad, as opposed to reasons why it will be better at the next level. Like, there was never any real positive substance to anything of his case. So that felt like one of the most obvious ones in the world, that just won't work out well. Trey Flowers was one where the early PFF grading absolutely loved him, and he became a good player. I would throw Grady Jarrett into that as well. Wildly undersized defensive tackle who had just graded exceptionally well and became a really good player.
I got a DM from someone the other day who said he'd been listening to us for about 10 years, and he said, you guys were early on Trey Flowers, and he mentioned a few other names. And again, it's not like when I think it hit rates, it's about against the baseline, right? Like anybody can go out there and be like, I had this player and I had that player, and we're just doing this for fun, just to rehash stuff, and it's going to be even for us, hit and miss wise,
right?
But that in this discussion, right? But you have to look at that stuff historically, and again, we had 1 year of data, but we were like, we want to pound the table for Grady Jarrett and Trey Flowers and see what happens. And there were some other players that missed in there, but I thought, for this person that DM'd me the other day, it was like eye-opening for him, where you took this player and said, this guy's a first-round caliber player, and he goes in the fourth, and he played like a first-round player, Trey Flowers, and he became a really good player. Grady Jarrett was a fifth-round player who became a really good player. And I really think as the NFL got more data and information, like if you redid this thing, Trey Flowers becomes a second-round player or a late first-round player. And I actually had a similar interaction at the Combine. It was funny. It was a D-line coach who I was talking to during that draft period. Did I tell this story on the show already? That draft period, back in 2015, he said, give me a player. He goes, I'm looking at this kid from whatever school, athletic, and I was like, oh, production's terrible. I said, you got to look at Trey Flowers. And he was like, I don't know, he's a little stiff, he's blah, blah, blah. I hadn't seen him in years, this D-line coach. And I saw him at the Combine. And, said hello, blah, blah, blah. We got some mutual friends. And I was like, remember I recommended Trey Flowers to you 10 years ago? Remember this victory lap I need to take here? That's what the Combine's all about. He goes, yeah, you were right. That's great. It was just funny because we really went to bat for Trey, for Grady Jarrett, for Troy Hill in that class, who went undrafted and became a really good starter in the NFL for a long period of time. So that was a fun run where we had data and our eye test, and we started to piece it all together, and we found some players who became good NFL players.
Yeah. Really good might be pushing it for Troy Hill, but he became a solid
He became
player.
good.
Yeah.
He became
certainly relative to undrafted.
For undrafted.
Given how, again, he was a guy that the PFF data had highlighted and had talked up and, was a solid player.
Mutual wins for us.
Right. What else we got?
You put Bud Dupree on here. I don't think so. Going back to that process, right? We had 1 year of data and information, and then we were trying to put all of our draft content out there, and we started to spread out. We grabbed a bunch of our colleagues at PFF and gave everybody a position group, and they would kind of we treated it like I was the college scouting director. They would kind of report back to me, and then we'd put the board and information together. I think Nathan Yankee actually deserves credit. He didn't love Bud Dupree that year, and he became a starter, but kind of underwhelmed from a production standpoint. I don't know if he's a pure hit though, in that I don't think we hated him necessarily. And I don't think you'd say it wasn't like his career was awful. He played a lot of football and was a reasonable starter, but he was a below average pass rusher for all but 1 year of his career.
Right. That's the thing. It's all the way along. The PFF data has basically said that this guy's not a particularly
But I don't think
player.
the college data hated him.
It didn't hate him, but it certainly didn't have him. He was nowhere relative to the top tier players that we were pushing that year.
I agree on that.
Production and profile was significantly lower than all those other guys.
The funny thing is, outside of the data,
yet he went in the first round. That was the thing.
He was a win for Steve's eyes, for me.
Steve's eyes.
Because when he was only Alvin Dupree, as a true freshman at Kentucky, he popped, and he was a write the name down type of guy, and eventually became a first. That was like Eric Rowe for me. It was like one-play scouting early in their career. That Blake Bortles, I had some of that like early.
Right.
These guys popped. They're going to be something.
But like, for example, we were that same year was the Trey Flowers year. So we would have been directly comparing first-rounder Bud Dupree to fourth-rounder Trey Flowers, and the data certainly loved Trey Flowers a lot more than Bud Dupree, and so did we. And if you do it that way, I mean, I know Bud Dupree's lasted longer than Trey Flowers, but Trey Flowers was an unquestionably better football player, I think, than Bud Dupree at the NFL level.
All right, so any other mutual hits here before we get into the misses?
I think Tyler Lockett was a hit for us collectively. I think we both really liked Tyler Lockett.
Was he the highest graded plus-minus guy that year, I think?
Maybe,
at
yeah.
Kansas State?
Certainly the data loved him. And I think, if anything, that was one where I think we both really liked him. The data really liked him. And if anything, we allowed ourselves to be a little bit scared off by the sort of outside noise of, well, he's small, undersized, blah, 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 and backed away from it just a little bit. Like, I mean, it's not like we ever shied away from, but we didn't push it as hard as maybe we should have if we just trusted what we saw and liked.
And we didn't have a board that year. I mean, I was in charge of the draft content, but we were all crowdsourcing it together. So we would put mock drafts out there. I do specifically remember putting Trey Flowers into a first-round mock. I think I would have put Jared into one, or we would have as a group, and I think we probably would have had Lockett in the first that particular year. Oh, you're just adding more names.
I just stumbled across it because he went 2 picks above Trey Flowers.
There's more misses than hits for us to discuss. So, I mean, that's
the thing anyone's interested in anyway. Nobody cares about your hits.
They don't care about where you were right.
You're an idiot. Everyone wants to hear how you were an idiot.
Let me just say this. If you're going to be different, and we were definitely different on that stuff, I think you got to do better than the baseline for it to be worth it.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately a lot of our stuff was better than the baseline.
Well, yeah, or you've got to be identifying a different type of player. Like, even if you're no better than the baseline, but you're able to identify a slightly different type of player, there's potentially some value in bringing something different to the table that somebody else can then fold into the process and upscale their baseline by adding in your thing.
Different is fine. You just can't have like your second best player playing in the UFL in year one.
Yeah, that's not helpful.
Not being specific or anything.
Right.
Just saying. All right, how are we doing these misses? Are we presenting each other's misses too?
Well, let's do the collective ones first, because between us and PFF, we missed hard on some players. Right. Some of them fall into the category of, you probably could have seen that coming. Maybe we should have. What are the lessons you take from your misses? Some of them, I don't know why they weren't good. Those are the ones I hate the most, where it's like, even in hindsight, I don't know why I couldn't see. I don't know why it didn't work.
Yeah. I mean, and it's simple law of averages, but go ahead.
The Vernon Hargreaves one is the biggest one.
Vernon Hargreaves, first-round pick out of Florida to the Tampa Bay Bucks.
Yeah.
When someone asks me on the street,
why did he bust?
Why?
Don't know.
What is your biggest miss? It's Hargreaves.
Yeah.
I was so confident in his ability to project at the next level. He was a 3-year starter at Florida. I watched his entire career. He was 3 years productive at Florida. Instant impact true freshman. He was a good athlete. Coach's son, I believe. Great football player. I think he could have played inside or outside. I mean, it was to the point where I thought, man, it kind of reminds me of Revis. He could be Revis. Like, I was like extreme.
Yeah.
Now, a detractor of Vernon Hargreaves, there were some bad plays on film, but you say this all the time. If you go look at the bad plays were double moves, and you could definitely pull out some lowlights of Vernon Hargreaves' career, especially like toward the end of his career. Like, he almost started better than I think his second to last year was better than his final year. So maybe that was the one warning sign, but we've seen that work the other way. We've seen that work with Tre'Davious White, had ups and downs. Derek Stingley had ups and downs. That shouldn't work
more
against
importantly,
Hargreaves.
Almost every single cornerback at the college level has been toasted on a double move a couple of times in their career. What made it so remarkable with guys like Surtain is that he didn't, but almost everybody does. So I don't think you can really use that as a reason that here's Hargreaves, because everyone's got those. Almost everyone's got those. Like, it's remarkable when a guy does not have those. But he had everything. Like, he had all the tools, was an elite level college player, and then it just did not work.
The first warning sign was when he showed up at the combine and was like 5'10",
Who was stacked,
203 or something.
Yeah, he was huge.
I got to get the official measurements because he felt like he probably played at like 190, 185. He felt slight. He shows up at 5'11", 204. And I swear he was listed at like 185, 190, probably like the classic 5'10", 190 throughout his career. He runs a 4.5, but his jumps were fine. But it just didn't look like a cornerback body at the combine. That may have been the first warning sign. And he goes to the NFL, doesn't last on the outside. He may have had like a minute of decent play in the slot, but that didn't run out. Like that kind of ran out. He just never produced at the NFL level. Really thought he would. Mm-hmm. I thought he had it all.
Yeah. So that's one where it's like, what did you learn from that mistake? I didn't learn anything from it because I literally don't understand why Vernon Hargreaves wasn't a good player.
I don't think you need to learn from misses.
I think you should. I mean, you should be looking at a miss and asking yourself why, with hindsight, could you have seen that coming? Should you have seen that coming?
You can ask that question, but I don't think there's a lesson.
But some of them there are.
I don't think there's a lesson in every miss.
Not in every miss, but that's what I'm saying. Some of them there are, and there are things you should learn from them. Some of them, even with hindsight, you're not going to – it makes no sense. So Hargreaves fits into the category of like, even with hindsight, I don't know why he wasn't good. Let's go jump down a few spots and go, okay, here's one where with hindsight, there was something to learn. Collectively, we all missed an Andy Isabella.
There was something to learn. Yeah, so we thought Isabella, speed, quicks. I think there was still a little bit – and we didn't see him as just a slot receiver, right? A lot of the NFL said, well, this guy's just a slot. We're like, dude, this dude runs fast. He torched Georgia for like 15 catches that year or whatever it was. So we're like, all right, this ticked a lot of boxes for us. I always enjoyed Renner's. I mean, I love Renner generally as a draft analyst, but I thought he always had really good insight on receivers. And we would talk to him, and he's like, man, I really like what was the comp? Did he make T.Y. Hilton comp?
I don't remember who he comped into. He
had some really high-end comp for Isabella, I believe. I can't remember who it was. And I think we all bought into Isabella's speed and quickness, and he just did not have the play strength whatsoever.
At all. And this is what's interesting because that was my concern for him at draft time, and I kind of allowed myself to get taken along with everybody else and be like, well, because it's another one, it's like if he had worked out, it would have been great because, PFF's grading on him was excellent. If you could identify an Andy Isabella, and he turns out amazing. So it was, we were sort of incentivized to hope that he would be good. But when I watch his tape, I'm like, anytime anybody touches him, he gets blasted off his route, and that's probably going to be a problem. So the lesson, I think, on Andy Isabella is if a guy does not have any kind of play strength, and I don't mean, at the catch point and contested catch situations or run blocking or whatever. I mean, if you're running a route and a guy puts his hands on you and your route gets completely messed up, that's going to be a problem. That, I think, is the big lesson that I took anyway with receiver scouting from Andy Isabella.
I think that's a fair one. I mean, yeah, again, I'm not saying there's no lessons to be learned there.
Yeah.
It's more my philosophical way of saying, like, you don't have to, undo your process. If your process is sound, misses are already baked in, right, into your already sound process. You're already working with not less than 100%.
Right. And I'm not saying you should change after every single miss, but I'm saying that bad misses should at least make you ask the question, could I have seen this coming, right? And at the time, I'm not saying retrofit everything you do to ensure that you don't miss on that guy, but I'm like, put yourself back in time and say, with the information I had at the time, was this possible to see coming, and should I have been able to, anticipate it based off that level of knowledge? And can I therefore change my process going forward to ensure that doesn't happen? I think with Andy Isabella, you can look back and say that was something we could and maybe should have seen coming and didn't for whatever reason.
Man, the chat remembers all of our misses. Good work, guys. Josh Jackson.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. Yeah. I think he had one great interception with the Packers or something.
Yeah.
And then that was it. That's a good one.
So another couple, I put this right at the end because I've forgotten about it until we saw the Bud Dupree, Trey Flowers thing. Man, we all love Paul Dawson. TCU linebacker who med plays consistently right there with Scooby Wright from Arizona State. No, Arizona. Arizona.
Yeah.
And they both failed, I think, for the same reason. Like, they were both natural ball players in college, and neither one of them had the required NFL athleticism. And that, I think, is a great lesson to take, which is, now, admittedly, at the time, again, early in the PFF grading process, you're like, maybe just how well you play the game is more important than looking for the super athlete. But it turns out there's probably a threshold that you need to meet, and if you don't, you're going to struggle to be a good NFL player.
Ironically, a guy like T.J. Edwards comes through a few years later and
it shows that it's not
pans
universal.
Out. Now, look, I think there was other field stuff with Dawson that we didn't know about or at the time, whatever. But his production at TCU was insane.
The combination of Scooby Wright and Paul Dawson is a good.
We both loved him.
Yeah, it's a good sort of a pair of misses that there is a learning, I think, to take from, even if there's a confounding variable in there.
The linebacker evaluations at the time were really interesting because we had like 3 years of data, and you had Scooby Wright and you had Paul Dawson, who were incredible from a run stop perspective. They were impact players. They took on blocks. They finished plays. Scooby would dabble as a pass rusher, even with his below average athleticism, and still make an impact. And then a couple years later, you had Deion Jones, super athlete, poor production out of LSU. I think I did the Tyree Wilson thing. I put him like really low on the draft board to make a point, and then he hits the ground running in the NFL. And Deion Jones looks like an elite athlete and has 3-4 excellent seasons in the NFL, and looked like an idiot on that one. And we thought we learned that maybe elite athletes at linebacker, are far more important than actual production. I think 10, 12 years later, it's more just, okay, linebacker production, however you're weighing that, is going to be high variance, and it's not as simple as just get athletes or just get productive players. It's usually a blend. But either way, I think linebacker and safety remain the most difficult positions to both scout and to project at the next level. I think that's the learning from Paul Dawson, Scooby Wright, and then say add Deion Jones as a miss, because I purposely put him really low to make a point and then look dumb for a few years.
I think thresholds was the learning, right? Like the sort of the takeaway was not necessarily chase elite athletes, right? There's a reason these guys blah blah, because ultimately that gets warped. There's some selection bias in there as well. Like the elite athletes are going to go high. They're going to get given more of an opportunity. They're going to get up time and space to start and play. And, a guy like Bud Dupree, right? Bud Dupree has been a below average player for most of his NFL career, but he keeps playing because there's a legacy attached to that first round stuff. And with some linebackers, like you're going to find some guys that were not particularly good linebackers, but because they're super athletes and because they were drafted high, they're going to get an awful lot of playing time before teams eventually sour on them. So it's not necessarily that you just swing in the other direction, only chase good athletes. But I think what you learn from a guy like Paul Dawson, like if you look at his mock draftable spider chart, it's like a little circle in the middle. I think thresholds is the lesson. Yeah. It's like you don't need to be a great athlete, but if you're a terrible athlete, that might be a problem.
But then Deion Jones made you think the other way because he was an elite athlete with, I thought, horrible. I just didn't think he looked good playing the position
that's why I think
at LSU, and then he figured it out very quickly.
But that's why I think the thresholds thing is important, right? If you're a great athlete but were a bad football player, theoretically down the line you can become a good football player by learning some things. If you're a great football player but a terrible athlete, you're not becoming a great athlete down the line. There's no ceiling to that.
I'll give you one more learning. This kind of goes back to like last week's show, because the QBs we're going to talk about where we missed is the scheme adjustment.
Yeah.
I think you learned a lot about that. And it's true at linebacker too, because I remember when Dawson came out, Smart Football, Chris Brown did a lot of great work. He used to write a lot about TCU and their 4-2-5 defense and how I think they don't have run fits, and there's like this freedom for the linebackers to produce. San Diego State's old 3-3-5, they had some players who they would just like attack downhill and maybe look good from a system or production standpoint, but not necessarily translating to the next level. But the quarterback college system projection thing, we had to learn the hard way. And look, it's not like we were dumb to football. Like we knew this was a thing.
Right.
We just chose to say, look, when Matt Johnson at Bowling Green is making big time throws on deep posts all day, we want to believe that this can translate. We want to believe that he's better than the 6'5" quarterback who can't throw accurately. We want to believe that Will Grier is going to translate, and maybe missed on those guys.
The two worst receipts I have out there on the internet, right? Number one is Tom Brady is no longer a top 5 quarterback back in 2014, like 10 full years before Tom Brady stopped being a top 5
You're
quarterback.
Right now.
So that is, I think, I'm happy. Yeah. So the two worst things, that one, and then the second one, I have a tweet during the draft. What draft, 2019? What draft is the...
It was 19, Daniel Jones and Will Grier.
During the 2019 draft, It's like, I forget what the exact tweet is, but it's like, we are pick number whatever. Daniel Jones went at pick number 6. We're at pick number 90-something. Will Grier is still on the board. Will Grier is better than Daniel Jones. Turns out that wasn't true. But at the time, I was pretty convinced that was true because Daniel Jones had not been a particularly good college quarterback, was basically being drafted just because of the physical traits, again, at a time where that hadn't worked out for a while. Meanwhile, Will Grier had been an absolute baller in college, had so much better tape, but was coming out of that offense where it's like, this is not a particularly applicable NFL offense, and Will Grier never showed anything really at the NFL level.
And Will Grier had such a fascinating career. He was the best Florida QB recruit in a minute, played pretty well as a freshman at Florida, got suspended for steroids. Like, he's the only college player to get suspended for steroid testing in the last 30 years.
Man, how small must he have been before that?
Right? Like, I'm pretty sure it was for steroid testing. Like, supposedly they've had steroid testing all the time, and no one's ever gotten caught, ever. And then Grier gets suspended. He ends up going to West Virginia. And one of the selling points, not only did he have a great year at West Virginia, but like game-winning touchdown against Texas, pinpoint to, I think, Gary Jennings in the back end of the end zone, and played really well. And again, it was partially like we liked what we saw, but we were trying to go to bat for the data and information. You're going to read out your
Giants fans pull this up all the time, or did when Daniel Jones was their quarterback. We're at pick number 86. Will Grier still hasn't gone. Daniel Jones went at pick 6. Will Grier is better than Daniel Jones. Oops.
Bold takes, man. We were trying to push those bold takes back.
I didn't even think that was that bold at the time. I was pretty confident that was true, and it just turned out it wasn't. I'm not even like I think the Daniel Jones side of it is okay. Like Daniel Jones has been okay NFL quarterback, maybe a bit better than people thought he would be, but within the realms of where I expected Daniel Jones to be. The miss is that Will Grier just was nothing. Will Grier, instead of becoming like a feisty Baker Mayfield style of NFL quarterback, just brought nothing to the table.
Now, could we have seen it coming? We had, on good authority, prior to the draft,
that's true,
that Will Grier was a two-phone guy.
I know.
And maybe we should have backed off. Once we heard he was a two-phone guy, pre-draft.
His brothers are like influencers or something, isn't that
That's right,
thing?
that's right. Yeah, maybe those red flags. Now, then Mahomes, brothers, and TikTok star.
Right.
Though he's disappeared a little bit, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Has Mahomes' production gone down with Jackson Mahomes' stature? Think about the data here.
I think the big thing, though, was, the adjustment, the offense adjustment. It's like thinking – like those kind of Baylor offenses, or like thinking you can just pluck a guy from a wildly extreme college offense and plug him into an NFL system. Like, there's a reason that NFL teams look at Ty Simpson and say, this guy's better than you think he is. It's because he's running NFL concepts.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the only player, because those are all the Bryles derivative offenses. We call them the Baylor offense, but it started with Bryles, and it's all over college football now, and it's Tennessee and the whole deal. I think Jimmy Garoppolo, coming out of Southern Illinois, is the only quarterback that's had success coming out of those offenses. I don't know if there's like Hendon Hooker came out of there. You've got Grier. I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks who haven't even had opportunities because they just haven't figured it out. Off the top of my head, I think it might be Jimmy G because he ran a similar offense in college.
And obviously there's various gradations of these kind of college offenses, but we're at the point now where if I got given a GM job, I wouldn't draft a player coming out of that. I wouldn't draft a receiver or a quarterback coming out of an offense like that. I just wouldn't.
Mitigate risk.
I can't trust it. Like, I've seen too many guys miss and not, like, the hit rate is so small that I'm like, I'm not saying go full the other direction. Again, what is your learning, right? I'm not saying you go all the way the other direction. Only give me guys that come out of pro-style systems, right? But I'm like, but if you're coming out of that offense, I'm basically out. I'm going to let someone else roll the dice.
That's why when Eric DeCosta says he has 197 draftable players, and I was half joking. I was like, I have 37 or there's 40. Or like if you just continue to, and it's okay if they hit. Like, it's okay. Like, let the other team be the first team. You're the first team that unlocked a Josh Heupel receiver. Good for you. Congrats. Like, we're just not going to do that. It's the same as eliminating Reuben Bain because of his arm length. It's the same as eliminating a guy because his 40 is 4.6 at corner. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's okay. It's eliminators. Like, all you're doing is
I think
coming up with reasons that you're not
drafting a guy.
I think you have to pick the right eliminators, but I think they're fine generally. While we're talking about that, why don't we just throw Corey Coleman in there?
Yeah.
I put him on my list, but I think that's like you loved him too, right?
No, it's good.
I really loved Coleman.
He's a miss for both of us.
And I went to bat for him. Like he had some of these goal line reps with a two-way go where he's just dusting corners. He was fast. He had movement skills. He should have been great.
And he's a perfect example of that. He's the wide receiver version of the Will Grier thing, right? It's like I'm no longer drafting a receiver from that offense, right? Like the closest guy to get me back into it is Chris Brazzell this year, where I'm like, and even then, it's like I wouldn't touch him if I hadn't seen his Tulane tape, but the Tulane tape might convince me to draft him. But otherwise, I'm not drafting a receiver from that offense anymore. I've seen too many. I've lived through too many Corey Colemans and Jalen Hyatts, and every year we get one of these Dante Thornton, where it's like, oh, look at him, like the height, the speed, the weight. He's like, yeah, but he's running an offense that runs 3 routes. Like, if you need him to run more than 3 routes in the NFL, we have a problem because I don't know if he can do that.
Thornton's fine as a 4th-round size, speed, deep threat projection.
But ultimately, he's probably not going to achieve anything.
But the other guys had higher expectations, right? Either first-rounders or second-rounders or whatever.
So I'm out on any receiver coming out of those offenses, and Corey Coleman was the biggest burn from it.
Anyone else? Mutual misses here.
Donnell Hunter? I guess let's throw in Donnell Hunter and Curtis Weaver as 1, 2. So slightly different, but
I don't consider Hunter.
2 sides of a coin.
I mean, look, I don't think we didn't think Hunter was going to be a future Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Which is what he was. He graded well in the PFF system, and then he had the testing, but he looked like he was a really good run defender in the system, just a low pressure guy. I don't know if that was. I don't think we pounded the table as like, don't touch this guy, because he went in the 3rd round. It wasn't like if he was getting 1st-round hype, we would have said buyer beware. Pass rush production isn't there.
Yeah.
I don't remember being anti Donnell Hunter. I remember describing him. Plus, I was in I'm just going to give my own perspective. Mm-hmm. I was in a mode where I loved watching edge rushers play the run, and it's in my notes somewhere. He was wrong arming.
Yeah.
On power.
We had literally no pressure at all.
The dude knew how to play the run, and I loved it. I think more the learning was there was a period of him, Khalil Mack, year 1 in the NFL, where they were great run defenders with good athleticism and low pass rush production, and then they figured that out. Mack was like an okay pass rusher, then elite by year 2 and beyond with the Raiders. That was more like what I tried to take away from that. Like, if a guy's really good against the run and he's athletic, he might be able to figure out the pass rushing thing.
Yeah.
I don't think I was down on Hunter necessarily.
I think collectively we all pretty were. He had a pass rushing grade in the 50s. He had basically no pressure whatsoever. He defended the run well, and he was young, and he was freaky athletic. But I think generally we were pretty anti that type of player at that time. But I'm not saying, he's an outlier for everybody. He's like the Josh Allen outlier. Like, people are going to waste a lot of draft picks trying to find the next Donnell Hunter, and there won't be another one for a while because that's not supposed to happen. A guy that freaky and that athletic and that talented should be able to get more than like a dozen pressures in a year playing at LSU, right? The fact that he had that profile and then became the player that he's become is ridiculous.
But I think we also knew that was John Chavis was the DC at that time, and I think they played more contained and they didn't unleash him. I think there were reasons. We weren't. I'll just say this. I was not anti-Donnell Hunter the way I've been against Trayvon Walker, Tyree Wilson, Shamar Stewart. I certainly wasn't against him to that point, but it was because he wasn't getting 1st-round hype.
And then a guy who I think falls more into the bucket of I don't still really understand why he wasn't better is Curtis Weaver, who, for anyone that remembers, Boise State for a couple of years, had PFF grading that was off the charts, his pressure rate was off the charts. He was solid against the run, if not spectacular. And then the kind of question on him was, well, maybe he's just not a very good athlete. And then he tested pretty well in some things. 3-cone was very good. 40 time, I think, was good. His size, the explosive numbers weren't there, so the jumps were pretty bad.
Yeah.
But it's not like he was a bad athlete. Like, he, I think, ended up being a better athlete than people expected him to be. And then it just went to the NFL, did nothing.
Yeah.
Had like the size you want, 6'3", 265, like a lot of reasons why it seemed like he would be good, and then nothing.
Let me add Maurice Hurst to the equation here too. We had just seen he had incredible grading and production. We loved him as the undersized 3 technique type. We would never say he's the next Aaron Donald, but we knew
right.
Undersized. It took extreme college production to say, okay, this undersized 3 tech type we buy into at the next level, and he was that guy. Now we knew he had the heart issue, that popped up during the pre-draft process, but we had him like 3 on our draft board at the time. So whether the heart issue became a thing or not, but like he became a decent rotational starter or a rotational player at points in his career.
The Daniel Jones Will Greer tweet is a low light for me in my tweeting career. One of my personal highlights, I think, was when I said that Orlando Brown had the worst combine of anybody in memory, and Maurice Hurst was sent home with a heart condition. Like, that's how bad his combine was.
It was. That's how bad Orlando's was. Yeah, Maurice. So I'd say that's probably.
I thought he had he was another one of those guys where it's like, all these guys have various risk, or I thought minimum he would be a good player. Like, he was so productive in college, and it's like not at a level of competition where you're like, we shouldn't be talking about a system where you go to the NFL and you're just stepping up 6 levels of competition and just doesn't play anymore. I was so convinced that Maurice Hurst would be at least solid, even if he didn't have the spectacular upside.
He did really miss a lot of time. He did miss a lot of time in the NFL.
Yeah.
That affected things a little bit because he had a couple decent seasons in there. That's certainly not like justifying him as the top 5 player in the draft class. One last thing I just want to add here philosophically, and I want to say that we'll do a good job of this on draft night when we do our coverage. Mm-hmm. I think we went through the same phase. I think a lot of draft coverage has come through the lens of here's what I think of the player, and I will now give you my analysis. Is this a good or bad pick for the team? And did they do the right thing based off my board and everything? I think we both got sucked into that line of thinking because that's kind of like what you're brought up on. That's kind of how Kuiper did it. That's how people does it. That's how they do it. I've personally tried to get away from that in recent years. I'm going to give you both sides of it. Like when Shamar Stewart gets drafted last year, you have to talk about the lack of production, but you also have to talk about what are the Bengals seeing in this draft pick? What are they hoping for? So I hope that our draft coverage evolves from, or it has evolved from, I like this guy, therefore I like the pick, or we spend all day like. Because in that draft, we were like, where's Maurice Hurst? Where's Maurice Hurst? And we were doing SI that night. And remember when Hurst got drafted at like 25? And we were like, finally, Maurice Hurst. And like, no. It's Hayden Hurst, the tight end, 25-year-old. We spent so much time talking about the player we think should go. And I like to think we've evolved from just thinking about our lens and thinking about what are the teams trying to do. Let's at least react to what they're doing and what they're thinking.
I think that's an overall takeaway we've had from all these misses and just generally how to approach this stuff is I think it's fine to evaluate a given pick, talk about plus and minuses as a player, even conclude that this is a bad or a good pick.
Yes.
But you're right. I think one thing that we've definitely improved on, because there were some people, I was reading through the comments of that PFF Wake show that we did with Mike. And, there were people out there that were sort of saying, you guys dumped on George, but you guys were snarky as anybody. And we look, one thing is I don't think I would tweet anything like that Will Greer, Daniel Jones thing anymore, right? Yeah. I think I've learned, if just for self-preservation status, right?
We're in our 40s
I don't want another one of those receipts out there.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to put a tweet. And for example, last year, like I was saying, I think the roll of the dice on Shedeur Sanders is worth a first-round draft pick. It's worth taking somewhere high. But once he started to slide, I didn't do what Kuiper did and spent the rest of the draft being like, why are they not drafting Shedeur? Draft Shedeur. He's the best player on the board. He's still the best player on the board. He's still, like every round, every pick was Kuiper going, Shedeur is the best player on the board. Any other draft pick is stupid at this point, right? To me, that's an idiotic way of approaching the draft. And maybe we would have done that when we were younger, but I would like to think that we don't do that anymore. So I think we've learned how to better articulate both sides of these things. And even if we disagree with a pick, we will at least give you what their thinking is, or our best analysis of their thinking is, even if the conclusion is then, but they probably shouldn't have drafted Shamar Stewart.
Yeah, so just want to throw that out there. Chat's really good at remembering receipts. They asked if we've talked about Henry Anderson or Jerry Tillery yet.
Tillery's a miss, definitely.
I'd say Anderson's closer to a hit, even though I think, again, we were trying to be bold and say he was a first-round player,
Anderson's
the same way
injuries
Trey Flowers was.
Ruined him. Yeah.
But Anderson was not – he was not a first-round caliber player. Like, he did not produce like a first-round player, but I think as a third-round
He got
pick,
knee injuries very early on, though, and was kind of ruined after that.
Jerry Tillery was a miss.
Tillery's a miss.
We were coming off of – Chris Jones was a massive hit, by the way.
Yeah. Really a Renner hit.
I I bought it into it too because that was the time.
Nobody in the
Renner
entire
put him in the top
landscape.
10.
Right. Renner pushed Chris Jones harder than anybody else in the entire
He put him in the
draft
top
landscape.
10. He had the great 10-yard dash time. I'm only bringing up, I'm not trying to divert from the Jerry Tillery thing. I'm just trying to go back and give the background. Jones hit in 17 or whatever it was, put him in the top 10, unbelievable production and athleticism.
Yep.
Tillery had a similar profile. And so we were on the back of hitting on Chris Jones. We were like, man, Tillery's got a similar 10-yard dash time. And he didn't have the same exact outcome in the 40, but production at Notre Dame and the whole thing. The red flag there, though, was Austin Gale didn't love his interview. So
Came out of his interview and said, I wouldn't take that kid.
red flag, guys.
Yeah, Tillery was definitely
But Tillery, we definitely went to bat for.
He's still in the NFL.
Well, there's a lot of people that we went to bat for. Him, Solomon Thomas.
Yeah.
If you're Mike Mayock,
Still
you could
in
be
the
like,
NFL.
Cleveland Ferrell still in the NFL. All these guys
Still going.
those are all
Right.
fourth-round players. Like,
And this is what I'm saying. Like,
They brought fourth-round production
Yeah.
as rotational players.
This is what I'm saying. It's like hard to sort of definitively say anything either way because you could argue based off the kind of, hey, everyone 3-year average of NFL players, like the guys that are still clinging on to a job 10 years into their career, that's a win. But if you're drafting that guy 4 overall, probably isn't. Henry Anderson. So his first 4 years in the NFL, he had PFF grades in the 70s, was very good against the run, was a little less good against as a pass rusher, but injuries really bit him.
Henry Anderson?
Yeah.
you said?
He got a knee injury, and I don't think he was ever really the same player after that. That absolutely hampered his playing time and also his production. I think that's a wash. It's somewhere in the middle. He looked like he might become the player that we were championing, but never did, in part because of injuries. As a third-round pick, I think so it's somewhere in the middle. Let's get on to our individual biggest whiffs.
All right.
I want to start with the one that you added at the end because I'd forgotten about that. You absolutely loved Gary Grabby Peters, who I think is still trucking away at the CFL right now. And that was one.
Is that really a miss then?
Yes. I like these ones because I like in particular, we talked about Hayden and Josh being on the same page a lot. I like the ones in particular where it was much more of one of us than the other one.
They are kind of fun.
And I was definitely scared by Grabby Peters being as grabby as he was. But the grading loved him and you loved him.
I did.
And it turned out he wasn't a good player.
I did. I mean, again, this was year 1 or year 2
Yeah.
of having the data, and we were purposely trying to be bold, and I was purposely trying to be skewed more by the data than the film, but than the tape, right? And then when I saw the tape, I was like, all right, I get it. The funny thing is, I saw the grabbiness, absolutely. My learning and takeaway, because there was a lot of Michigan corners that were doing that through the years. They would have unbelievable.
But also, the rules are different. So
the rules are different, right? So you always have to unpack, are these guys just good at college, knowing how to get away with contact and illegal contact beyond 5 yards, or are they just naturally grabbly because they have terrible footwork and the whole thing? But Michigan corners went through this stretch where they'd all give up like 30% completions against, but they weren't great NFL players necessarily. But Peters, I was like willing to ignore that because he made a ton of plays on the ball. And then there were even points where we were going back and grading 2013 film and and he just kept popping up making plays, and Trey Flowers kept popping up making plays in like the old film, and I'm just like confirmation bias left and right when it came to Peters. My defense is always though read into someone on good authority who said he just didn't want to stop off-field activities that are illegal in the NFL that might be illegal in Canada and in the CFL, and that's where he's gone and become a star. And so maybe we were right all along.
Don't think that's true.
That's not allowed. That's a miss for me. I went to bat on Gary. And so I think I've got a receipt out there that he was the best Peters in that draft.
Yeah, because he was in the same draft as Marcus Peters.
And Gary.
That's not a good one. It's good. Like people were saying, or someone was saying earlier in the chat that like they just don't remember your takes because you don't say them as passionately as I do. So you've got like that's every bit as bad as
I am reminding people.
Right. That's
now.
every bit as bad as my Daniel Jones, Will Greer thing, and nobody knows about it.
Yeah, it's good. I'm coy.
All right, finally we can get to the Mingo one so that Walt can shut the hell up.
Jonathan Mingo, discuss.
Yeah, I got that wrong. Got that wrong pretty hard. I like Jonathan Mingo coming out. I thought he had the size, the speed to be a good NFL player. Could not really separate on the outside. The Panthers didn't want to use him inside as a big slot weapon, and so he just doesn't really have a place in the NFL. Yeah, big miss. Hard miss.
Just while we're here, someone's asked if we were high on Damon Arnett or Alex Leatherwood with the Raiders.
Nope.
would they have 7 first rounders across those 3 years or whatever? We were low on every pick except Josh Jacobs, but he happened to be a running back. He was
Right.
And
the
player that we liked the most, but he was a running back.
Correct.
We hated Jonathan Abrams. I put him on our hit list as a hit. Alex Leatherwood, Arnett and Abram may have been my 2 least favorite first-round picks over that 2-3 year period of any team.
Yep.
Just saying that. But yeah, you had Mingo on the miss list. I had a Mingo on my miss list. This is just like the personal stuff here. This was pre-PFF, and I just loved Barkevious Mingo from his true freshman year. This is how I used to love when I saw a true freshman, and it was like, I'm going to follow this guy his whole career. And Mingo had such good burst off the edge and long and bursty and twitchy and everything. And from his true freshman year all the way to when he got drafted. And then he had this one rep against Alabama. And I just never forget it. The dude's got, what was his actual arm length? Had to be 35-plus inch arms. He kept 2 Bama players at bay, 1 arm each, handling the double team. And I'm just like, this dude can't miss. Barkevious Mingo, he's using his length to
33 and something.
He just felt longer than that. But he was slight and skinny, and I hated all the scouting terms. No sand in his pants and the whole thing. And it turned out to be true. There was not enough power to Mingo's
That's the
game.
thing. So he's got all the athleticism, right? 4.58 40, a 1.55 10-yard split, 37-inch vertical,
Unbelievable
128-inch broad. These are all like 86-plus percentile numbers. But weight, second percentile. Just didn't have.
He was just
the
small.
size.
Yeah, and so my learning, and that was just my own personal preference. I thought he was going to be great. He went 6 overall to Cleveland. He had decent sack totals, I think, early in the first couple of years, but never a great pass rush production guy. I thought his run defense actually was decent at the NFL level early on. But he was an interesting guy to follow, and I was very wrong on him. Ended up having like an 8-year career. He had an off-field incident that I think he ended up being okay with, but either way, underwhelmed as the 6th overall pick.
Yeah.
And I thought he was a great prospect.
Walt claims that I loved Traylon Burks also. I don't think that's entirely accurate. Even
I think
at the time.
You spent a lot of time describing his skill set.
Yes. I liked Traylon Burks.
More than taking a strong stance.
I liked Traylon Burks as a talent, but my problem was always he doesn't currently play a wide receiver position. Right? Like they had him deployed in that Arkansas offense doing everything. Like they just tried to get him the ball in as many ways as humanly possible. Generally speaking, I have a tendency to like those guys anyway because they're just super athletes and there's a reason they're trying to feed him the ball. But I'm also acutely aware that they have a pretty bad strike rate in the NFL because at some point, because the NFL can't do that, right? There's just no... They can't build an offense around one gimmick player and just feed him the ball relentlessly. NFL defenses are too good, and there's not enough space because the hash marks are different. So if those guys can't become just a conventional position player at something, they're not going to be good NFL players, no matter how physically gifted and athletically talented they are, right? This is why the Tavon Austins of the world, who's the Bengals guy way back in the day, Peter Warrick. It's why those guys... Like, they can be the best college players of all time, but if you can't just play wide receiver at the NFL level, there's no...
Mo Hall.
I can't just endlessly give you jet sweeps.
Ironically, Mo Hall just asked about Tavon Austin.
Yeah. So I think all those guys fit, those guys, the Ty Montgomerys of the world, the Savion Williams from last year, Traylon Burks, anyone that fits that category of if what you did in college was just get fed the ball in 15 different alignments... Unless you can be convinced that they're actually really good at a specific NFL position, wide receiver, running back, tight end, then they're probably not going to succeed because those guys don't.
That brings me to my next miss, but the linebacker version of it.
The linebacker version.
Isaiah Simmons. He was a jack of all trades on the defensive side of the ball.
Yep.
So I completely bought into the fact that he had reps as a, true free safety, breaking on the ball. He had reps in and around the line of scrimmage, rushing the passer, playing the run. You could play everything. I completely bought into the jack of all trades thing, especially as NFL defenses. And I think you started to see a little bit, the Ravens were moving guys around all over the place. They were moving Chuck Clark into the box and leaning into versatility and amoeba type of defenses. And I thought Isaiah Simmons was the perfect answer. I went through a few years of Derwin James and these these players who could cover tight ends and play zone and blitz. And in Derwin's case, I thought he could have been an edge rusher, a legitimate edge rusher, which is different than a blitzer, just like Jamal Adams could have. So we were in this phase of Derwin comes in, Jamal Adams came in. He had a great start to his career. I thought Isaiah Simmons was going to be the next guy. And then week 1, they go up against Kyle Shanahan and the Niners, and poor Isaiah Simmons on a string, running around in circles on like 12 reps. Like they had to take him out because he was just out of position by like 10 yards every single play.
He became the meme, the Kyle Shanahan microscope meme.
Yeah. And so that did not pan out. It did not pan out the way I thought it would with Simmons.
I still think that Isaiah Simmons could be a decent caliber safety. I think his problem is he's a safety in a linebacker's body. And the NFL is generally, I don't think they like guys that are a good player at a certain position that are a completely different body type. I think it's still short circuit something in NFL personnel guys' brains where they're like, well, let's move him to his correct position based off his body size, and he'll be an even better player. It's like, but what if he's just naturally good at a certain position and happens to have the wrong body for it? Unless that body is actually prohibiting him from doing anything, and if he can run a 4.39, it isn't. You know what I mean? Like it's not like being 240, 250 pounds is a problem for Isaiah Simmons because he can run a 4.4. So leave him. Leave him at safety and just say you've found an abnormal, freakish-bodied safety, and that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, Simmons.
But now he's just a special teams player.
Right. So that was a miss for me.
Did he really only measure at 238?
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
Huh, I thought he was bigger than that.
What else you got here?
What else do I got here?
Oh,
Derek Barnett.
We both missed on Barnett, I think.
Derek Barnett, I thought, would be a good, productive NFL player. He
was just not what we thought. We thought he might be
like really good.
We thought he might be like 1B. Like we had Myles Garrett ahead of him, but we thought he might be still worth going top 10.
His bend, there's so many reps of his bend in college at Tennessee where it's like off the charts absurd.
Is he the best Bane comp?
Yeah. But like off the charts absurd bend and therefore extremely quick wins and like crazy reps. And it just never, I mean, he's been a solid NFL player, but I really expected that bend to translate and him to just be an exceptionally productive pass rusher.
Now, I think he was one of the first guys who went and worked out at the combine and then had the agent come out the next day and was like, he's got the flu and a broken ankle and his knee. He's like, 17 excuses the next day or something. Ran a 4.88, 1.69 10-yard split, both below average. Average to below average.
But the three cone was where it showed up. A 6.96 three cone showing you that the guy's change of direction and bend was nuts. But it just never really turned into being.
But is that the closest thing? Because what I loved about Barnett was his freshman year at Tennessee. He steps into the SEC and is like a jackhammer against the run. And just country strong, true freshman in the SEC. And was 3 years of production. And I was so impressed all the way through. And that was I think the first time where, because we tried to like poo-poo the workouts a little bit. I know Walt's over there. Oh, the film's the only thing that matters. It's not the literal only thing that matters.
Or at least
there's a weighting system. It's like, and when you take a class and the professor's like, all right, your grade is 30% this exam and 30% midterm and 30% final and 10% participation or whatever it is.
Or at
10%, this homework assignment. Well, the 10% still matters. The final exam still matters more, but the 10% still matters. Like the workout still matters. You can't literally be a middle school level athlete and play in the NFL, right? You can't, but you might be able to be productive in college.
But at least convince yourself that, well, that's an elite three cone. Plus, look at all these bendy plays. Like you put those two things together. And like he's got the athleticism to be productive at the NFL level. Nothing, I think, sums up his NFL career more to me than his best PFF graded season and pass rushing season was the year the Eagles traded him away. Like he's just not that good. He's a solid rotational player, and I expected him to be a lot better than
he's
that.
become, like if you got Barnett in the third round, the level of production he had in his NFL career was fine. But he went to pick 14. We thought he could have gone top 10. And that was one where I think the true burst and explosiveness is what probably did him in, whereas that didn't match like his college production and everything. He had a lot of half-man wins, too, that he didn't finish. I don't know. There was maybe some warning signs, but that's just us doing hindsight analysis. Big miss on Barnett for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
I had Forrest Lamp. He's another one of those, like he moved to guard, and we were like, just try him at tackle, just try him. So we never got to see him at tackle, but he had the short arms and didn't have the power for guard, so he was a miss. Even like Joe Dahl, like, again, we're trying to like trust the grading, and it just didn't translate one for one.
Well, Joe, yeah.
Forrest Lamp had great grading. Western Kentucky, they moved him to guard, which I don't think was his game anyway, and he just ended up being this tweener and below average NFL player.
That's the thing. There was a couple of those guys where really productive college tackles, but had really short arms. Forrest Lamp's were 32 and a quarter, so 11th percentile arm length, like almost a full inch shorter than Will Campbell's. And so the NFL just immediately moves those guys into guard, right? That's just, as a matter of course. Whatever about Will Campbell being borderline, if you're 32, you're almost never getting a shot to play offensive tackle at the NFL level. They just immediately kicked into guard. But with Lamp and Joe Dahl, I think those guys, like stylistically, they're not guards. They're guards because their arms are 32 inches long. But stylistically, I think those guys played like sort of finesse technician offensive tackles. And so both those guys suck when they play guard. It just doesn't work, right? Now, I don't know if they would have succeeded on the outside if the arm length would have just been prohibitive and the competition or whatever. But I don't think we necessarily obviously there are misses, but I don't think the counterfactual of he's also terrible at guard means he would have been as bad at tackle necessarily.
All right, what else do you have?
Chase Winovich, I think, is probably in the similar bucket to Derek Barnett. I just thought his floor was higher than that. I thought he would be at minimum. I thought he would have the Derek Barnett career that he's had, and he hasn't.
Yeah. I don't know if something happened off field where he just didn't want to keep playing or something. He had like little spurts of production, but we had a lot of debates about this dude's more productive than Rashawn Gary.
Yeah.
Why not take him over Rashawn Gary? And
he was out of the NFL after 5 years.
Yeah. I don't know what else was happening
diminishing
with Winovich.
Time. Basically 2 seasons where we saw any kind of snaps, and then was immediately bounced around and was gone.
I was with you on that, though. That was a loss for us.
Yeah.
I'll get to my other one.
Another guy just been very, very productive.
Finish
in college,
yours.
and then wasn't.
Finish your list.
Drake Jackson, another edge rusher that had freakish bend and ability to get around the corner and just hasn't really done anything at the NFL
Niners,
level.
second rounder?
Second or third. I thought, again, he had the kind of bend and the ability to turn the corner and the production in college that all seemed to add up to being a productive NFL pass rusher, and then hadn't been. And then the other guy I would throw in there, different position this time, Jeff Gladney at corner. Absolutely battle-tested. The dude had been in college for 4 straight years, gone up against everybody you'd ever heard, had a million coverage snaps, and had been a good player every step of the way. Vikings took him.
Good spurts of good play, right?
Really wasn't good for
Rest
him.
in peace as well.
Right.
I'll give you my last one. I know the chat's been waiting. Jermaine Burton.
I don't even think that counts as a
I know.
loss.
I have to acknowledge it, obviously, because in our old age, Sam, of course, I put all the caveats out there. We knew the off field. I said it was worth a third. We knew it was a high risk but high upside opportunity for the Bengals to take
clearly,
Burton.
the way his career has gone in the NFL, it's not an on-the-field talent issue that's running him out of the league. It's everybody saying this guy can't get out of his own way. We can't get him out of the casino at night. We can't get him to show up to meetings.
Can't get him to practice,
right.
to meetings,
at which
to
point,
anything.
it doesn't matter what he is on the field. He's no longer going to function as an NFL player. And the analysis was always, if you keep him on the straight and narrow, Jermaine Burton's talent is really, really high. But obviously, given that literally nobody has a good word to say about him, that's a massive risk. Now, so it was always baked into the equation that if you roll the dice on him and it works out, it's good. But you're rolling the dice knowing that 5 out of the 6 spots it lands on are not going your way.
I just had to mention him because the chat's not going to deal with nuance, and it's I covered all that stuff ahead of time, right? We said just on the field, and then just for fun with the wide receiver rankings, I put him at 4 because I'm just going to say tape-wise, but I put all the caveats in place. Yeah. To protect against this downside, which happened.
You bet on a long shot horse knowing it was a long shot and it didn't come in. That was.
And look, I'm not going to get into this. This might be good when we talk to the bootleg guys. I'm going to bring this up. I put out a theory the other day, and I'll let you guys discuss in the chat. I don't think the NFL is bad at evaluating quarterbacks. Everybody says the NFL is bad. They don't know how to develop. They don't know how to find quarterbacks. I think their hit rates are just what they should be in a 32-team league where the league goes 500 every year and half the teams have winning records, the other half have losing records. I think it's exactly where it should be. And it's the same thing like you just said. If you bet on a long shot,
right,
it's a long shot, right? And every quarterback bet is a long shot. We'll talk about maybe that's a good theory to talk about with the other guys in our bonus show that we're going to be recording later today.
It would have been a miss, I think, if you had never acknowledged any off-field concerns for Jermaine.
Yeah, of course.
Said he's awesome. He's like this done the Mel Kiper thing. Like he's the best player on the board for the last 40 picks. This is a steal. Like, what is the rest of the league thinking, letting this guy fall this far? Like if you'd done that, it would have been a miss. But the whole point was the entire process was always this guy's an off-field nightmare. But if you do manage to put him together and keep him on the straight and narrow, then the talent is elite.
All right, man, this was fun going through. Any other names you want? Oh, I have to acknowledge one more thing, just because it was a fun bit on the show for a while.
What's that?
2018 draft. Renner and I did our pre-draft show, and we said we're going to make some bold predictions for the draft class. And my bold prediction, was it 18, 17? The Corey Davis prediction. That Corey Davis was going to be a 1,000 reception,
1,000-catch guy.
Receiver.
Where did he finish?
4 something, 3 something, 200.
I mean, that's better than he looked like he might end up.
Corey Davis stats.
Corey Davis career. As soon as this, populates.
Let's see.
Loading up the page.
Dude, why do I have to verify that I'm human every time I go to Pro Football Reference?
And then disable the ad blocker.
Every single time.
273.
273.
That's quite a way short of the 1,000.
Now, he's younger than, as Renner put out yesterday, he's younger than Mac Hollins.
Still time.
So he's got another 6 or 7 years.
He's only 31 years old.
He's Mr. Playoffs, though. 15 playoff catches across 2 games and 0 in his
another
other
one that I don't really understand why it didn't work out. Like he fits, 6'3", 210 pounds, could run, had ball skills, seemed like the complete package at the time. And it was okay.
Yak ability. He turned into, and he ended up making, at the time, like high-end number 2 wide receiver money with the Jets, which was, I thought, a good deal.
Which is what he became.
He became a very good, like a solid number 2 receiver. Not T. Higgins level, just a solid number 2. Great compliment to A.J. Brown.
Yeah.
Not as good as Devontae Smith, not as good as T. Higgins, just a good number 2.
Never had a 1,000-yard season, but had, one of 891, had one of 980, had 2 65-catch seasons. Like, was productive, but was never the number 1 difference maker that I think everyone expected.
Starscream has told me to remind you about Denzel Mims.
See, another guy, Baylor offense.
Was that the same Baylor offense, though? I think so.
I think so, yeah. Collectively, there was a series of receivers that turned me off that offense. That
Roy
was
Coleman,
learning from all of those guys. I am not touching a receiver coming out of that system. And it wasn't, but remember, Kiaris Garrett from, what the hell?
Tulsa.
Yes, Tulsa. Also running that offense.
Yes.
I'm not taking them anymore. I'm out. It took me a while to learn it, but I'm not drafting any receiver coming out of that offense ever.
All right. So I had to mention the Corey Davis fun. I think this is a fun though. Exercise and rehashing a lot of our old takes and opinions and where they went right, where they went wrong.
So that was the 2 learnings from the Denzel Mims one. Number 1, don't take any receiver out of that offense ever, right? And that was a Corey Coleman learning and a Denzel Mims learning and a Kiaris Garrett learning.
But the why you did it is because his Senior Bowl.
And that's the other learning is the thing that you thought was everything for the Terry McLaurin and maybe that was a one. There's no
everything. There's no magic ball.
Maybe there's still some signal in there, but maybe don't lean on the Senior Bowl thing as much as he did for McLaurin and Mims.
It's kind of like the Casey Concepcion discussion, right? If you say, well, the film's bad with his hands, but at the combine he fixed it. It's like you can't just go with this on air. Just because it was the most recent thing that he fixed it. Any other players?
What is it? Does Chad have any more of our receipts? I'm sure there are other misses we've forgotten about.
Let us know if we have any other receipts. We'll go through some draft bets really quickly here. All right, Rick Cable has. I accepted a bunch last week by myself, monologuing.
Okay.
Rick Cable says Dominique Orange, a.k.a. Big Citrus, will be drafted by a team in a North Division, either AFC or NFC North. So we got a 25% chance.
Is there a reason for that, or
I don't.
Is there logic connecting those, or is it just what the hell?
Just because he's big and he's got to be a run stopper in the black and blue divisions, perhaps. Okay. AFC or NFC Central prediction here.
Do we take? This is literally just a roll of the dice for a 25% chance of it hitting.
Yeah, he will put up some local coffee in Austin, Texas, for some merch. So
okay.
Go for it.
Sure.
Accepted.
That's the closest bet I think we've ever accepted to just here are the odds. Like
25%,
like that's 75% chance you win. Take the bet.
Yeah, might as well take it. Scott Leonard says the Cleveland Browns will select Malachi Fields in the 2026 NFL Draft. That's right. Bold and specific.
Yep.
He would like a check the mug mug. Sorry. If not, he'll donate $100 to the charity of your choice. That's a great bet from Scott. And then Jurgen has a couple here. Reuben Bain will fall to 10 at the Bengals or lower. Ty Simpson won't be picked any earlier than the 3rd round.
Are these individuals or are this parlay?
No, it's a parlay, actually. Sorry. So both must be true. Reuben Bain, 10 or lower. Ty Simpson in the 3rd. That's bold.
And Ty Simpson. Doesn't go earlier than the 3rd.
3rd round.
It's old.
He says it's probably a hassle to send coffee from Austria to the U.S., so instead he offers $50.
So Jurgen, then, not Jurgen.
Oh, Jurgen.
He's Austrian.
Thanks. I didn't know you were fluent in Austrian.
German, but I've
in Austrian.
I learned German for a couple of years in school. I don't know how much of it I would be able to understand now, but I did learn German for a while.
I speak Austrian now. He offers $50. Voucher for a local coffee shop of your choice. Please let me know their name so I can contact them about the voucher.
Okay.
In case of winning bet, no need to send any merch across the pond. A shout out would be nice, but instead of merch, I don't know what he's going to say. I'm just reading it. So simply put the value of the merch to a charity of your choice, e.g. the one you put at Christmas time, I'll double up at that time. So that's great. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, okay.
By Jurgen.
Jurgen, the not German, the Austrian.
The Austrian.
There's a British comedian called Harry Enfield. He used to do a sketch called Jurgen the German. And the whole thing was, so
that's why you know. Obviously,
German-British tensions over the years have had various peaks and troughs, the peaks being world wars and stuff. Faulty Towers had this big thing. It was like, don't mention the war. And Harry Enfield's sketch used to be this guy, Jurgen the German, going to like various different places. And then, so he'd be like waiting at a bus stop with a guy, right? And then there's awkward sort of chit-chat and small talk. And then he would just go, I feel I must apologize for my country's conduct during the war. And everyone would be like horrified, like exceptionally awkward, but it's pretty funny.
That's great. Good stuff. Somebody said, do we hate on Khalil Shakir?
I don't think so.
Mohall brings up Roman Wilson. That's a miss so far. I really liked Roman Wilson. He's done nothing, but maybe it's Aaron Rodgers' fault. Elijah Moore. We liked him. He's been below average across a million different spots.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, there's a trend, I think, for a lot of these sort of second, third round receivers that a lot of people like that just don't end up becoming much at the NFL level.
Oh, we didn't mention our biggest second round miss, Sky Moore.
Yeah.
We didn't get to Sky
Moore.
That was one. That was still like confusing. Should have been a good fit.
Right. Don't understand that one. Again, collectively. Just didn't work.
The Devin White one's really interesting because I think we
did not like Devin White.
Did we not like him coming out?
No.
Renner really liked him.
I liked Devin Bush a lot more than Devin White. Now,
and I would consider
up until last year that didn't look smart either.
Biggest model bust?
Oh, that's a good question.
I'd have to dig it up.
It's the biggest whiff on the model.
Darius Rush, maybe?
Darius, yeah, he's another.
I had him on my list, the South Carolina corner.
Yeah.
I thought he could have been a good second rounder. He goes in the 5th and was never really good.
Right.
Some warning signs on tape that I ignored because there was some good stuff too.
Yeah, Hakeem Butler was a miss for PFF.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of people.
I'm guilty on the Butler thing.
I think there's something
with some movement skills.
I think there's something to these guys. Everybody talking themselves into mid-round receivers because a load of people loved Hakeem Butler as well. Not just PFF. They were definitely PFF was pushing it as well, but a load of people loved Hakeem Butler, and he just did nothing. Except in one of those spring leagues, he was really good.
True.
I forget which one, but in one
for
spring
Bruce,
league,
I think he played for Bruce.
Yeah,
right?
maybe
Battlehawks legend Hakeem Butler.
Bruce had assembled at one point. I don't know if this is connected to being at PFF, but at one point, Bruce's entire receiving core
was like receivers the PFF kind of liked during the draft. It was Akeem Butler. He had Gary Jennings at one stage.
Yeah,
there was like a whole, like he had 4 of these guys that were all like PFF draft time darlings, and that offense cooked. So maybe we were right.
The first iteration of my model loved Gary Jennings out of West Virginia.
I like Gary Jennings as well. I think he's another one of those guys that fits the Gary Peters. Maybe there's some off-field things working there as well.
Just blame the off-field, like all the animals.
Well, this is the thing. So this is part of why it's always complicated, is you never quite know why. You never know when the guys who don't work out because they were just not very good football players, or didn't work out because the NFL team can't trust them and maybe they're not into it, right? Like Jamarcus Russell. How much of it is because he's not watching any tape ever? And how much of it is because he's not good enough? Johnny Manziel. How much of it is because you watch literally 0 tape ever? And how much of it is because he's just not good enough to play at the NFL level? Like, those are always difficult things to know without hearing about it after the fact, and you don't always get that.
All right, man, this was fun. Long show. Got to a lot of stuff. It's just fun going back in time, talking current draft, risers and fallers, and then some of our old takes. But we're into draft week now, starting next week. Monday, we'll do I want to do the fan mock draft on Monday. We'll let you guys mock draft on Monday. We'll let you guys vote. Wednesday, we'll touch on all the news. And then Thursday, we won't be live on Thursday morning. We'll be live Thursday night. We'll be going live about a half hour before the draft, and we'll be here all night. We'll touch on every pick live and then recap it again immediately, especially for the listening audience for the next day. We'll do that Thursday and Friday night. We'll be here all day Saturday, going live as needed. First studio draft for us. I'm excited. I'm excited to be here in our home, and lots of love about next week, and finally here, draft time. All right, that it for today?
Yep.
We're going to be recording a bonus show later here today. When's that going to come out?
Tomorrow, I think.
Brett Coleman,
Yep.
Bootleg, EJ Snyder, a little bonus show we're going to be recording here in a list. We're going to go grab some lunch and come back and record with those guys. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again Monday morning, 9 a.m. More. Check the mic.